Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. I am Luxander. This is the Transatlantic Call-In Show. It's the show where you can call in and talk to trans people about trans issues. Do you have questions about hormones, or do you take issue with the idea that being anti-trans is a form of bigotry? We've got conversation ready for you. And I'm here today with Riverboat Jack. How you doing today, Jack?
Howdy, I'm doing great, flying by the seat of my pants, but that's okay.
hmm My cat has just made her first appearance on camera, jumping on top
Oh,
of my treasure chest. So that was unplanned, but there she is.
oh, she's so beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what's new with me. What's new with you, Jack? What do you got going on lately?
Oh, I mean, I've been getting used to being on the line. It's been pretty cool. I've been enjoying the conversations. It hasn't been as spicy on the Transatlantic Call-In Show as I would imagine it would be under our current times, but maybe that'll change today.
Yeah, that's the goal at least. Like I know for me, um, I find it kind of challenging that this show has required a lot more like emotional labor than I would have originally anticipated. Just because lots of people out there are like hurting and
Yeah.
they feel like they need guidance and they want support. So we gotta find some kind of balance between like the support calls and the spice. But definitely, I'm in the mood to yell at people, so I'm hoping that we get some more
Same.
folks in here. Yeah, let me open up call-in studio so I can actually see what's going on. Um, so the number on the screen there, 720-619-2288. If you want to call in and talk to us, we also have a web caller linked in the description. That is only for callers who are outside the United States. So if you're in the United States, we prefer you call in through the number there. And yeah, let's see what. Let's talk about the poll from last week. I guess it's time for the poll while we wait for some calls to roll in. I wasn't here, so I don't know what it was. Do you think the Heritage Foundation will be successful in efforts to ban all gender affirming care? I think I heard this news. I bet you probably talked about it on your stream already, Jack. Like the Heritage Foundation, which was a primary architect of the Project 2025 thing that we all kind of were terrified of passing, and they've successfully started on like 50% or more of the all the different items in their like 800-page manifesto functionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've said like, no, it's not just about youth gender care. It's not just about sports. Like they are trying to eliminate all of this care for everyone, including adults who should have like the bodily autonomy aspect going on there. What are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, I'm watching that full clip because I know exactly what you're talking about. He's talking with like a far right podcaster named Patrick Bet David. Uh, and what's telling about that is that even Patrick Bet David, who is virulently anti-LGBTQ in like every capacity, is just kind of like, whoa, but what about Caitlyn Jenner though? And it's just like even to other far right people, like the Heritage Foundation like goal of banning all gender affirming care for everyone everywhere seems insane. Like it doesn't I don't think it resonates. I don't think they actually have despite all the blitz around trans rights we are experiencing everywhere, um I don't think there's actually a ton of constituents for what they're trying to do. Like if you're even if you're MAGA, you're living, in the middle of the country, and you're just looking at that, being like, "Wait a minute, my rural hospital's closing down. Uh, why are we talking about one trans kid that's in the entire state?"
I have wondered at times if those kind of kitchen table issues are part of the reason why we are not seeing as much like aggressive calls, or like we get lots of repeat callers. But it's like, when people's food stamps are being threatened, functionally that impacts a lot of Republican people because they live in lower income states that use a lot more of those resources rather than paying into the resources. And like Republicans tend to be they're supposed to be the small government people. They're supposed to be the sort of libertarian leaning party where they're like, get the government out of my guns and whatever. So it makes sense, and it's like a little glimmer of hope that ideologically they will start to like see some inconsistencies, or like realign themselves with their actual stated values. Like their actual stated values are the government should get the hell out of my business and, mostly be hands off and like small government and lower taxes and all this kind of crap. So the more like resources we devote toward restricting trans rights, like that's money. That's tax money that we have to pay. Like we have to pay a security guard now to stand outside the bathroom, like at the government buildings in Texas, for one example. Um, yeah. So the vote on this, I think, was a little bit more disproportionate. A lot of the times, we have like a very small percentage who take what is functionally the anti-trans position, I guess. This one, we were looking through the comments, and it's more like they will be successful because the people who we've trusted to like take care of these things, the Democrats, are just kind of not doing anything, um, or not doing enough. So I completely understand that and like resonate with people. I also understand and resonate with the people who are like, I have a hopeful feeling that I hope that that doesn't happen. And I agree with you that I hope that that doesn't happen. And also that it might anyway. Yeah. Do you have an opinion on like specifically whether they will be successful?
I mean, I don't think in the long term that any attempt to ban is going to succeed simply because we're going to continue to exist
Hmm.
regardless of what they do.
Totally.
And I think that as time goes by, our utility as scapegoats continues to decline for them. It's why they've had to like double, triple, quadruple down to scapegoat us. You
Mm.
know, you can look back like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and the amount that they had to like fearmonger against us was much less. And now they have to pretend like we're like this all consuming threat. And I think at some point reality just punctures through to folks and they're like, we are concerned about our material well-being more so than just like the abstract idea that a trans person might exist, you
Yeah,
know?
and we aren't even their primary scapegoat group right now. Like this
Yeah.
administration is like violently and aggressively targeting immigrants at this moment, and anyone brown. So,
I
uh,
mean, it's really just a way for them to look like they're doing something
sure,
while continuing to rob working class people blind so that they can give money to the Epstein class donors.
so true, so true, bestie. Just so everybody knows, we're having a little bit of weirdness with call in studio. We're trying to get it resolved. So if you're waiting to call in, there might be a little bit of a wait as we kind of try to sort out the technical issues. If technical issues is on your bingo card for today, then go ahead and mark that one off because we're having technical issues on the back end. And I need to announce in my Discord that we are live. Let's take a quick look at next week's poll, or this week's poll, I should say. And we're not going to get too heavy in the discussion, but we're going to kind of just touch on it and then move on to calls potentially. And there's always going to be a version of this in the chat for you guys to vote on in the chat, as well as going to the community posts tab on the channel if you want to add any discussion to that forum conversation. Do you think that forcibly revoking legally issued IDs of trans people will hold up in court? Suspense. We will talk about it more in a minute. We'll give more details. But we'll shoot the shit. We'll vamp for a second, shoot the shit while we wait for some of these calls to get in here and figure out our call in studio nonsense. I'm so excited, by the way, to be on with you because this is
Yeah.
my first time getting to. We did something with Progressive Victory a few years
Yeah.
back in a group setting, but this is the first time we're getting to like really 1-2 punch tag team on the calls. So I think it's gonna be a good vibes.
Yeah, I think so too. It has been too long. Like I don't do a ton of like collabs with other
Me neither.
creators, and so
I'm terrible.
it's always fun when I get to, and especially when like I know that they're like a good bean like you. Like I just I enjoy hanging out with you.
Yeah, we have a lot of crossover in our audiences as well. Riverboat Jack and I are both streamers. Are you primarily on Twitch, or you do both? You dual stream to YouTube and Twitch?
Yeah, I do both.
Yeah. But there's a lot of people who are like oh, I'm having a hard time deciding which one to go hang out in if we're ever streaming at the same time. Or like, oh, I just came from Riverboat Jack's stream, and I'm like, that's cool. So we must have like similar vibes. So I think it's gonna be a good time.
I think so.
Still trying to figure out the screening issue. What other is there any other trans news that's been going on lately? Because honestly, I've been a little bit tapped out and like focusing on health stuff.
I mean, like the stuff out of Kansas is obviously the big one. Like uh, that for I don't live in Kansas, but like my heart has just been eviscerated this week over what's happening there.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so needless. Like I was watching last night local news reports from Kansas, which
Mm.
a lot of them treat it like a footnote, like it's like not that big of a deal, or just like, oh yeah, this is a thing that's happening. And like they interviewed the Republican lady behind the legislation, and they asked her like, oh hey, are you like what stories have you been hearing that this is been a problem that you need to legislate around? And she was like, well, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head, but I've heard things sometimes. And it's like, you don't even have an idea why you're doing this. You're just doing it so that you can look like you're doing something while robbing your own constituents blind.
Yeah, there's an agenda there. I don't know if you know this, but I actually am from Kansas and I just moved away from Kansas to Oregon a little bit over a year ago. Um, so this was definitely, I'm like, oh, this would be me. I would be
Yeah.
affected by this if I still lived back home. Like I would suddenly not be able to drive. um, so yeah, I'm like, whew, glad I got the fuck out of there. Um, but we do have a caller waiting. It looks like we're gonna start off with spice. We're just doing
Oh, okay.
immediate spice. So I hope everybody's ready, strapped in for this. We are going to bring in Makai. Please correct me on the pronunciation once you get in here. Makai, he, him pronouns from Maryland. You are live on the line with Luxander and Jack. How's it going?
It's good. How are you?
Doing all
Living
right.
the dream. Tell us what your topic is. Lay it on us. What do you want to discuss today?
Trans people. The the live. You said that trans people deserve to transition.
Yeah.
So I want you to describe to me what you think a trans person is.
Okay, well, it's usually we have our person we bring on like kind of lay out a topic. So I think like if you want to say which your call screener notes here say there's no such thing as a trans person. I'm curious what your
Yeah.
understanding of a trans person is.
Well, when you say transition, what is really transitioning? What do you mean by that? What is the metric that we use to describe a person who's transitioning? You say transition. What are we actually changing in transition?
I am assuming that the context of the title of the show, which is Trans People Deserve Transition, I think what's being evoked there is that trans people have a right to medical autonomy, to make medical choices about their biology. But there are numerous different aspects of transition. There's like the social aspect where you just tell people, hey, I've got a new name. Call me by these new pronouns, like the social acceptance. And there's also a legal prospect of being legally recognized as the correct gender, which is something that's been in the news a lot lately. Is the idea that trans people shouldn't have documentation that matches how they look, which is a big deal. If you get pulled over and your ID, like the gender marker on your ID, doesn't match your appearance, you could be arrested for having a fake ID, even though it is technically legally accurate in these states where it's not allowable to change your gender marker. And then, yeah, there's the medical component as well, that we deserve access to medical treatment to alleviate any distress we feel around, like, you know, maybe you're flat chested and you wish you had boobies. Well, guess what? You can take a little pill daily that'll give you the boobies, and you should have the medical right to do that. So, does that help clarify at all?
Yeah, I understand that. But when you say like you're changing these pronouns, how you decide to express yourself, physical changes, there's a collective that we're deciding on. You're claiming that the person is changing their gender. That's what I really wanted you to understand. how can we deviate between sex and gender when it doesn't really make sense, you know? It's all rooted in your biology. You can't really change that.
Did
Well,
you want to jump in,
okay.
Jack? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. If a man has low testosterone, do you think it's wrong for them to take like testosterone supplements to like bring that up into like a normal range?
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Okay. So like they're changing their biology to get their testosterone up, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So in a similar sense, trans people want to change their biology to fit more with what their mental state or identity is. Similar to a man with low testosterone who wants to bring his body into alignment with how he views himself. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand, but the point I'm trying to make is there's nothing that's changing here. When you say gender, you're saying that the person is transitioning. You're saying that they're changing their gender. They're not really changing anything. They're still the gender that they were born as, the sex that they were born as. There's no transitioning that's going on. The
Well, I just
hormone levels don't
described the
really
way
change
in
that, the way
which
they express
I
themselves.
just described the way in which your body changes. Like you're doing something to your body to change it, right?
Yes, we understand that the
To
person is
to
changing their
affirm your
body.
gender, right? You're doing it to affirm your gender, right? If you're a man, you have
Sure.
no problem with a man
Mhm.
affirming their own gender. So
But is
a
there any,
trans
so
man
there's
is a
objective,
man who's affirming their gender, right? So what's wrong with a trans
okay.
man affirming their gender by taking testosterone versus a, cis man taking testosterone to do the exact same thing?
So what you're really saying is gender is just this scale that we utilize to determine how well a person fits onto this dimorphism of femininity and masculinity rather than their actual sex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
gender and sex are decoupled. Yes.
Yeah, basically the breakdown is like gender is like how you think of yourself and like your
Mhm.
understanding of like what your society kind of sets like goals for genders basically. Like the goal for women in some societies is to cover up their hair and stay at home. And the goal for men in some societies is to, like in the past, wear powdered wigs and high heels and tights. So those gender things are personal, they're subjective, they change over time, and they kind of constitute like a cultural agreement about what it means to be a man or a woman or to be masculine or feminine. And then there's the biology component, which is that typically when we are talking about like trans people's gender dysphoria, it means that their understanding of what their body should be like. So, like, if you're born with two arms and two legs, and you have like an idea in your brain that you're supposed to have them, if your arm gets cut off, some people have like phantom limb because your brain is still programmed to believe that you have two arms and two legs because humans evolved to have two arms and two legs. So it seems as though there's that kind of brain body map distinction with trans
Okay.
people, where trans
So
people feel
what is
like,
the
oh, I really
objective?
should have these
What is
other
the
body
objective
parts.
metric of transitioning? You keep saying, I understand what you're saying. You're changing certain things to fit more into the sexual, but what is the objective that we're using to determine this actual change, right? You say you're trans, but we can't prove that. How do we prove that a person is actually trans?
How do we
How do you
prove that a person has depression?
We can look at their brain, and there's certain brain differences that can tell us if a person is
That's
depressed
not part of the diagnostic
or
process for
so.
depression, actually. Have you ever had a mental health assessment? Because that is not how we diagnose depression at all.
Well, I don't think that we can ever completely accurately diagnose them. There are many people who are misdiagnosed. A lot of the time, I was
So, do you
misdiagnosed
think that
too.
we should
Yeah.
stop diagnosing depression? Sorry, Jack, I'm on a tear here.
Yeah, no
Um,
worries. Go
do
for it.
you think that we should stop giving people antidepressants or stop sending people to therapy because we have no way to actually objectively confirm that they have major depressive disorder?
No, I don't think that we should stop that. But
Okay. So why? I want you to understand, maybe you don't know this, the diagnostic process for trans people on a gender dysphoria thing, they basically it's the same type of diagnostic process as major depressive disorder, where you report your subjective experience of like, I'm having a hard time getting out of bed. I can barely shower. And the reasons for those things are different. Like maybe a trans person can't shower because they're so disturbed by their body that they cannot bring themselves to like interact with it in that way. Like that's a pretty severe level of dysphoria or dysfunction. And so you have a relationship with a medical professional who helps you determine what the problem is. And sometimes that process requires experimenting a little bit. Like maybe you start on Prozac and then Prozac, oh man, it makes it hard for you to sleep. And so then you switch to Wellbutrin. And that is the diagnostic process for depression. With transition and gender dysphoria, we basically suggest like, okay, start making some lifestyle changes. Like, oh, lifestyle changes are also recommended with depression. Maybe you need to exercise more. Maybe you need to get more sleep. So with trans people, it's like, maybe you should try growing out your hair or painting your fingernails or, trying out a different name. And then gradually, if those interventions are successful, we then implement basically hormones and surgery that change the sexual characteristics. Because this is the other part of your question that you're stumbling over, is that sex is it's called a polythetic category, where we look at like chromosomes and whether you have boobies and whether you have a beard and whether you have testicles or whatever. And all of those things kind of together are how we identify someone's sex. And if you can change like literally almost every single one of those characteristics, that's what we mean when we say a trans person is changing sex.
Yeah, but you're not actually changing your sex though. That's the point. That can't change what you're
do you
actually
think
changing.
sex is?
Well, sex is within the chromosomes. I don't have an exact definition, but it relates to a person's reproductive.
Do you think that someone could have like XY chromosomes and boobs?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think someone could have XY chromosomes and vagina?
Yes, possibly.
Okay. So like you're trying to say you base your gender off of your own chromosomes?
Yes.
Have you ever had a DNA test?
No, I have not.
So how do you base your own gender identity off of your chromosomes? You don't even know what they fucking are.
Well,
like go get a DNA test and then make this argument, bro. Like, come on. You're calling into a show and you're like, well, it's my chromosomes. My chromosomes make me a man. You don't even fucking know what your chromosomes are.
Neither do I, by the way.
You understand how much of a joke you are right now? Like, come on.
This is a bit ridiculous.
Yes, you are being ridiculous.
Where we can assume persons.
You're sitting here being like, the bedrock of my identity are my chromosomes, and you don't even know what they fucking are. Do you understand how that's a problem for your entire argument and your entire worldview?
Well, I'm sure my chromosomes are XY, but we don't have any objective.
But you just said someone with XY could have boobs or a vagina. You have no idea. You could have XX chromosomes.
Yes,
yeah.
You can,
so
under certain
biological
conditions.
sex.
These are very rare.
You could have
actually,
that.
It's way less rare than you think. You know that we stopped doing chromosome testing at the Olympics because we were finding out that so many people were intersex and giving people like an existential crisis. And like it used to be a thing that you would do in like advanced high school or biology in college, where you would do a chromosome test. And I remember there being like movies about this when I was a kid in the 90s. There was like a movie about a girl who did one of those tests and she found out that she was like half white instead of both parents being black or something. It's like, so it was such a trope that it was in movies, but we don't do those kinds of genetic tests in a casual classroom environment because it is very confronting when way more people than you think have a chromosomal anomaly, because it's not actually the chromosomes that determine sex characteristics. It's actually much more like about the SRY gene, which is carried often
Yeah.
on the Y chromosome. But if you don't know, Makai, I don't know either. I can't afford genetic testing for no goddamn reason. Like, my insurance is not going to cover random chromosomal testing for no medical purpose. So you don't know if you are a man based on your own definition, which is what Jack is pointing out. Like, you're just like, I assume, like, but you can't, because you could have a translocated SRY gene on one of your two X chromosomes. You do not know.
That's very unlikely. We don't really know anything. Like, you don't know if you're going to be
Wait,
alive
do you know what
tomorrow.
the
You don't know a
prevalence
lot
of
of.
intersex people are? Do you know what the prevalence is? Do you know how common it is?
I'm sure it's less than 1% or
It is
around
it is
that.
a roughly the same percentage of people on this planet that have red hair.
Which on
Okay,
a
I don't
global scale means
understand.
tens of millions of people. And by the way, the known percentage, the 2% or roughly 2% intersex people that we know about, are people with obvious disorders of sexual development at birth, usually, or when they get to puberty, they don't develop the way that they're expected to. So we don't actually have hard numbers because we don't test everyone's chromosomes. It's possible that if we started doing chromosome testing, that the number could be as high as like 10%. I'm just spitballing here, but this represents tens of millions of people or potentially hundreds of millions of people.
Okay, I understand that. But even if I do determine that I do have XY chromosomes or some sort of intersex anomaly, it won't change my behavior to any extent. And that's not because
Yes,
I
because
have
you
You
a
have a
get it.
gender
gender identity.
identity.
It's
You
just
did
because.
it. You did it. You've somehow backed your way into an understanding that your sex and your gender identity are two separate things. You've accidentally done it. Congrats.
Not exactly. Not exactly.
You
If you
just
found
said
out,
if you were intersex, it wouldn't change anything about your identity, which is
yeah.
true. Because they're two
Well, I
separate
would obviously
things.
call myself a female. I would have to objectively state that I'm a
Would
female. What
you
I mean is I
really?
wouldn't change my
Would you
behavior
say, this
or
is
the
my
way that I
female
act.
penis and my female testicles? Is
You
that
would
the
in,
kind of person that you would be?
you,
You would require everyone to call you she, her pronouns from now on? Let's change them. Put it down there. Makai, she, her pronouns.
Well, I probably don't, so I'm not going to do that. I mean,
but you
we're
might,
Put your
obviously
money where your mouth is, Makai. Put your money where
right?
your mouth is.
just this is just an example, but you understand what I'm saying. I don't understand. If I was to find out that I have XY chromosomes, it wouldn't change my behavior
XX
by
chromosomes,
any
babe.
degree because
XY is the stereotypical
yeah,
male.
there are no objective sexual expressions or behaviors on the basis of one's sex. That's what I'm trying to enunciate, is that it wouldn't change anything.
That's what
I
I'm
am the way
saying,
I am.
Makai, that you agree with us.
Huh?
You agree with us right now. You're saying that even if you found out you have
Yes.
XX chromosomes, you are still going to
Yes.
behave like a man. You're still going to walk around the world like a
Yes.
man.
No,
That's what
not
trans
behave
people
like a
are.
man. There is no objective. No, no. Why do you have to appeal it to a specific sex? Why do you have to say that this is female behavior or not?
Well,
You're not acting like a female.
so the thing is that I actually draw a distinction. I don't say female behavior. I say women, because female and male do refer explicitly to the sexual characteristics, like chromosomes, like testicles, like boobies, and the gender stuff is more social.
No.
So
Nope.
behaviors are
Sex and the
social.
gender are the same. The
You're
gender is
just
just how
fucking
we
stupid.
describe this
Okay,
person's
so
sex.
wait. So if you found out you had XX chromosomes, you would start introducing yourself to people as a woman with she, her pronouns?
If they were to ask about my
Because they're the same
biology, then
thing.
I would. Hmm?
You're saying gender and sex are the same thing. So if you found out that you had XX chromosomes,
Yeah.
you would start introducing yourself as a woman and using she, her pronouns.
No, I wouldn't do that
Why?
because it would confuse people. It doesn't matter what I call myself. That doesn't change what I am. That's the problem. It
It
doesn't matter
doesn't
what I
change
decide
what
to
you
call myself. At
are.
the end
So
of the
you would
day, I
still
would
be a
still,
you're saying to me
at the end
right
of the
now that
day, I
you
would
could be a
still be a
woman.
female or a woman, but I wouldn't decide to address myself as that because it would simply confuse people and it wouldn't make sense.
So I want to just like pause here. You called in with he, him pronouns, but you don't know what your own
Yep.
biology is. You're just assuming that. But you're trying to say biology and your gender are the same thing. And
He,
so you
him
don't know your own
pronouns I use in the
biology.
context.
You don't know your own biology. And you're trying to make this argument that your gender is your biology. They're the same thing, right?
You're not being fair. Of course, I'm a man. Of course, I have XY chromosomes. Like,
You don't
this
know
isn't
that.
something that I have to
You
go
do
get.
not know that. You have
I,
already said
there are
you
too
don't
many.
know that. You don't know that,
What I
man.
mean,
You've already given the
I
game
can't
away. You
scientifically prove
don't
it
know
right now,
what
but
you
we can assume
are.
it.
You are making a bunch of assumptions. And I'm going to let you know something. You know what those assumptions are? Do you want to know what those assumptions are?
Yeah, go ahead. What do you?
Those are the social constructions of gender. You are literally engaging with a set of assumptions you have made based upon your own physicality, based upon your interaction with the wider society, and you identify as a man. That's why that set of assumptions that you are making
Sure.
is part of what
It
gender
doesn't
is.
change anything.
That's
It
a
still wouldn't change.
socially constructed thing, man.
Right.
It's
It's not
socially
objective though. That's
constructed.
the
It
thing.
is not related to your sex because you don't even know what your sex is. So you are obviously not engaging with that. Does that make sense?
Yes,
I feel
I
like I'm bashing my
understand
head
that.
against a brick wall.
Do you think, Makai, that if a trans person is like, let's say that they are born male, like you, presumably, they don't know their chromosomes, they just are guessing, and they think of themselves as a woman and they transition and they look beautiful, you know, they look like us. They look like wonderful, long haired, pretty faced individuals who look really good with eyeliner on, you know, and it would be confusing, maybe. Do you agree that it might be confusing for that person to go around and say, I'm a man with my double D sized titties?
Yes, that would be confusing.
Okay, so you kind of seem to grasp on a basic level
Okay.
that trans people make changes to their biology that means that it makes more sense to socially address themselves as a different gender.
Yes, sure. Yeah, trans people are deciding to align themselves with what we consider to be feminine or masculine. That's it. It's not objective. That's the point that I'm trying to get to. Is when you say man or woman, you're still referring to biology. You're referring to the
No,
chromosomes.
I'm
You
not
can't
actually.
deviate from that.
You're just putting words in my mouth because I have already been very clear that gender means like how you understand how you fit in society.
Okay,
Gender and sex
fine.
are
But
not the same thing. Like
the problem,
medically, they're not the same
Okay,
thing.
wait.
Makai, I really need you to stop fucking interrupting me. I'm not dealing with it very well. People change their social status and their biology. They are separate axes. They're two different things. Sometimes people want to change their social aspects, but they are unable to change their medical aspects. And that can make life a little bit harder for them. And also, there are gender nonconforming trans people. There are trans women who play sports and work on cars and they wear masculine clothing and they date women, like basically like a butch lesbian, but she's trans. So we are not just conforming to social stereotypes. We are fundamentally changing the way that we interact with ourselves and the world through transition. Medical technology gets us pretty far on this. And like the social stuff
yes,
sometimes correlates and sometimes doesn't. There are gender nonconforming trans people.
yes, I agree on that part. But it's a problem with terminology. When you say trans man or trans woman, you're referring to the chromosomes. You're referring to biology when you say that. What you
No.
really should be saying is transfem or
What?
transmasculine, because you're referring to
Those are different
characteristics.
terms.
Yeah,
So I'm happy to educate you because those are different terms. Transmasculine is an umbrella term that refers to the transition, but includes people who do not identify as a man because they're just like, I'm not a binary man. Some
Yes,
people
that's
would
the
describe me
problem.
as transmasculine
Man,
for that reason. But man is a gender
okay,
identity. Man is how you think of
no,
yourself. The fact that you do not know your chromosomes, but you still think of yourself as a man. So your definition of your manhood is not rooted in your biology. It can't be based on your own stated position. Go ahead, Jack.
yeah, my definition doesn't really matter when the science comes about. What
okay,
I'm
can
saying
I
is that
I'm gonna
I
take a
man,
agree
different
with
I'm gonna
that.
take a different tactic here. Do you think okay, so Thomas the Tank Engine. Is Thomas the Tank Engine a boy or a girl?
Thomas, because of the name, I would assume that it's a boy.
You know Thomas the Tank Engine, right? Like he's a train with like a face on the front, right? You assume Thomas the Tank Engine is a boy. Okay. Is that assumption based on Thomas the Tank Engine's biology?
No, no, it's not.
No. What is that based on?
It's based on what we decide to adhere to biology, but obviously
It has no
it's
bearing on
still an
biology.
engine.
It's a fictional tank engine.
It's a train.
Yes,
It doesn't have
yes,
biology.
it is.
So how is
You're right. I
assuming that
shouldn't
it's a
have
boy
answered
have
that
anything to
question
do
so
with
quick.
biology? How does Thomas the
All right.
Tank Engine's gender have anything to do with biology?
The
Great
all
example,
right.
by
I
the
will
way.
admit that
Thank you.
that was stupid, right? That's how we do it. We take these terms and we place it next to a person's physical characteristics, and we say that they're a particular sex on the basis of that alone. That's the problem. It's the terminology is what's confusing to people.
Well, the
You can change
problem
your you can
you are so
you can
close to
change
getting
your
it.
name.
I'm so proud of you. You're so close to getting it.
Okay, but at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to get to, is you can change your name, you can change your expression, you can change the way in which you act, your physical characteristics, but you cannot change your sexuality. The problem is that trans man, trans woman is referring to your sex. That's the problem.
It's
Man
not
means
though.
male.
It's not though. I just demonstrated that with Thomas the Tank Engine, right? Thomas the Tank Engine doesn't have a sex. He's a fictional train,
And
right?
it's not confusing to people that
You
he can
know it
use he, him pronouns.
you know it's not confusing because it's from a television show made for children, right? Have you ever seen the show Bob the Builder? Or are you
Yeah.
familiar with it?
Yes, I am.
Have you seen Bob the Builder's penis?
I hope not. Rule 34, though. So
Have you seen Bob the Builder's chromosomes? No. You don't have to just like have like a silent answer. You could just say no. Because the reality is Bob the Builder is a fictional character who doesn't exist. But we call Bob the Builder he, him, not on any kind of biological basis. We call Thomas the Tank Engine he, him, not on any biological basis. It's because man is not referring to the biology. Male refers to the biology. Female refers to the
Then we
biology.
need to update.
Man and
Then we
woman
need to
don't.
update. We need to update the dictionary, because the definition of it as it stands now is referring to sex when we say the word man or woman.
So the dictionary is written to describe how words are used, usually in a colloquial fashion. We are having an advanced level discussion about biology and sociology. So you don't go to a sociology class or a biology class and argue with your teacher with the dictionary in your hand. That's not how it works. We advance our understanding by studying, looking closer, getting into the nitty gritty of the definitions. For human beings, most of the time, it doesn't necessarily, well, and maybe not most of the time. For human beings, it doesn't always make sense to conflate the two things, sex and gender. For many people, those are in alignment because I believe it has something to do with the brain body map thing. And if you're born with a penis, then your brain thinks I'm a man most of the time. But that is not the case for trans people. We're still in the process of researching that and figuring out what exactly is the mechanism, or even if there is one single mechanism that makes people trans, because it's not something that's within our control. Want to be clear about that. Like the distress that we feel at the misalignment between our internal understanding of ourselves and the way that our bodies are presenting to the world, like that distress is like the thing that defines us as trans. And we have tried many different treatments for this, by the way. Like we've tried to put people on antidepressants and antipsychotic medication and do talk therapy and make them do exposure therapy to like try to embrace their true gender, quote unquote. And we have found through decades and decades of study that the number one way to resolve that distress is to help people change their sex characteristics and to socially transition. Now, none of us give a shit about our chromosomes. Like, you've already agreed, your chromosomes do not define who you are. If you found out you had XX chromosomes, you would still be like, I'm a man. So that's what trans people do. They're like, I don't even know my chromosomes. I'm not going to get that shit tested. Some of us might have intersex conditions that we don't know about. Like there might be some kind of link between intersex conditions and trans people. We don't study that because there's not much money in studying that. But that's all. We're just saying, like, I know that I have a biology. I'm fucking aware. I see it every day. I know. I'm not like stupid. And we are choosing to change those things. And we change enough of those things that we occupy a completely different social and biological space. Like, did you know that when a trans woman takes estrogen, her risk of cardiovascular disease changes to match non-trans women's risk of cardiovascular disease? And her risk of prostate cancer plummets, absolutely plummets. Like there is basically no such thing as a trans woman on estrogen who has prostate cancer. So there is a functional difference in the biology when we make these changes. So it's not reasonable to say like you can't change your sex when we change literally every meaningful aspect of our sex that we interact with on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, no, we haven't changed chromosomes yet, but the point is,
You are
we
just not
just need to
listening. You are
figure
just
out.
not listening, Makai. Your chromosomes have no bearing on how you live your life. It is not how you define
They
yourself.
do
And it is
define your
not, it's
sex.
not
They
what,
do define your
when
sex.
you have,
That's the point we're
listen,
trying.
Makai, listen, when you have sex with someone or you go to the doctor and you need to tell them your medical history or someone wants to get pregnant by you or something, like those day-to-day things matter so much more when we are talking about how we define sex. Like, do you have a penis? You know, like that's like a day-to-day thing. And you can change whether you have a penis.
I'm gonna try something else here. Makai, do you think the word man has always meant the same thing?
No.
No. So the word man comes from Old English, man. And man was the word for human being, regardless of sex or gender. So over time, words and meanings can change, right? And I don't know. Are you familiar with the 1999 animated film Tarzan?
Yes.
Okay, in that film, there's a song by Phil Collins, "Son of Man." Do you like absolute banger?
He had no reason to go that hard.
But like in that song, do you think that it's a song about Tarzan being the son, like the son of like a biological, human being, or do you think it might be referring just in general like he is a human being? Do you
I don't
think that
understand
maybe
the
the
question.
1990 do you think that maybe the 1999 film Tarzan is using man in a broader sense than you are using it to say man must always mean biological sex?
Sure.
Okay, so what we're saying here is that there's like a misunderstanding based on the semantics here, where you're like, well, man has to refer to biological sex, and we're telling you, no, it doesn't. And there's like historical precedent going like for that going back literally thousands of years. And I think you can understand that when it comes to the film Tarzan. So we're asking you to understand it here too, because it turns out language is complicated and it can mean one word can mean multiple different things. And in this context, we're telling you man does not refer solely to biological sex, which is why we have male and man, two different words that are used differently.
There has to be an objective definition of what the word means. It can't be
Wait,
that.
no, but
There
words
is,
don't
though.
have words don't have objective definitions.
Oh, that's true. They're all subjective
like
because we imbue them with meaning.
yeah, like there we don't
Yes,
find
but
words like buried in the rock and then we're like, yes, this is the objective meaning. Like that's not how words
okay,
work.
but when we use the word man or woman, we're referring to sex.
No, we're not.
No, we are not. That's what we're trying to tell you.
Maybe you are. And
Majority
like,
of
this is
people
called
are.
this is
No.
called bioessentialism. This is called bioessentialism, and this is an ideology where you say your biology defines who you are as a person, which is kind of the whole crux of the conversation that we've been having this entire time, is that you don't accept that in science there is a distinction between biological sex and the social understanding of gender. So you can just dig in and like double down on being wrong, but you are wrong, and I will continue to tell you that repeatedly until we get bored with you.
But also, I just want to throw out there, if you're saying there has to be objective definitions for words, you just have the definition wrong. It's why we use two different words here for two different things or different phrases for different things. And you're saying, no, this one word has all the meanings,
Yeah,
which is
our
just not
way is
how that
actually
works.
yeah, our way here is more precise, more accurate, and conveys more information. If I make a distinction between male and man, that is creating a clarity that your position is completely discarding. You're like, yeah, I would actually rather muddy the waters and take two words and basically use them interchangeably as though they're the same thing. And our position is like, no, these words refer to literally completely distinct concepts.
And you admitted that earlier in
Okay.
our conversation when you said, if you found out you had XX chromosomes, you would tell people that you are a female, but you'd continue using he, him pronouns and it wouldn't change your day-to-day life. You've already acknowledged this distinction and you've already acknowledged that
That's
our way is more precise to refer to people.
my way doesn't matter. Like I said, I would use those terms to prevent from confusing people, but it still doesn't change the science at the
But
end of the day.
you are
You're
using them in a
confusing them.
confusing way. Like you are
You're-
literally using them in a confusing way by saying that man equals male, female equals woman. Like they are not the same thing, and your way creates more
Okay,
confusion.
okay, fine. Let's say that man and male don't mean the same thing, female and woman don't mean the same thing. That's just one point. But when you say that, you're also implying that there's some objective difference that you're changing when you're saying that you're a part of this gender. Like, what is objective about gender? You're saying that if I don't
Literally
have these
nothing.
specific
nothing.
traits, then
Literally
I'm not.
nothing about gender is
Yeah.
objective because you have already accepted that the notions of gender change over time. Like, would you, Makai, today, in this day and age, would you put on a white powdered wig and tights and high heels and go out and drink and like go to a pub? Would that be something that you would do that would be in alignment with your understanding of yourself as a man?
No, that has nothing to do with gender
Okay.
either.
No, it does. Shut up. Oh my God. Because I'm getting to a point here. That was like the peak of masculinity in the higher classes, like the upper class. That was like peak masculinity when this country was founded. That was peak masculinity. So we clearly have an understanding that gender expectations change over time. And gender roles change over time. Like there are cultures where it's more normal for men to be nurturers versus women to be nurturers. And like we evolved to distribute those tasks relatively equally. Like women have always been hunters. There's this like idea that, oh, women did the gathering and stuff and they stayed close to home. But no, we have archaeological evidence that women were out there hunting. So like the ideas of what is socially understood and acceptable with regards to gender changes over time and through different cultures, etc.
I get that. So, but the problem with this argument is you're describing that there's objective behaviors and expressions that align with a particular sex. If you're saying that you're aligning with that particular sex on the basis of your gender, you're saying that.
We're talking about two different things. I'm saying there is a social transition with the gendered groups. Like let's, like a trans man decides he wants to start weightlifting and he goes to a super bro-y gym and he cuts off the sleeves off of his shirts and he's like taking fucking creatine or whatever. Those are all social aspects of his gender transition. And there may also be a separate component where that trans man is taking testosterone and has a double mastectomy to make his chest flat. And those are changing some of the sex characteristics. Obviously, he probably doesn't even know his chromosomes, and we don't currently have a way to change them. And who the fuck cares anyway, because it literally doesn't make any difference to any part of the function of your body. When you take the hormones, that changes like a lot of things about your biology and your phenotypical traits. Like literally, he will also end up with a more chiseled jaw just because of fat distribution changes that occur after like 5 or 6 years on testosterone. He will grow a full beard potentially if his dad has a full beard, because that stuff is genetically changed as well. So like we are talking about two different things. You can change your gender without necessarily changing your sex characteristics. Like that's not a requirement. It's just, it helps with people recognizing your gender more easily. Like if you have a pretty little dainty feminine face, that helps people to reflexively see you as a woman. But also like we did not used to base gendered expectations off of those little biological markers. Did you know that it was actually super duper easy to be a spy in like the 1930s because people did not really look past your clothes? Like clothing was so binary that like you could just put on different clothes and people would just like not notice that you were cross-dressing basically. Are we needing a moment to
Oh,
process?
did we lose him?
Did we lose him?
I think we
No,
lost him.
we lost him. Loser.
He
Couldn't
was
handle it.
so close. He was so close to getting it. It's so like he like got right to the edge so many times and then just like backed off of it because he was scared of the implications.
Because of the
Oh,
implications.
the
That was fun though.
implications. Yeah.
That was good.
God,
Nice.
I do apologize for the very first thing I said to him was just me yelling at him about chromosomes. I just I couldn't handle the complete.
He was being pretty dumb, to be fair.
That was really I had a good time. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the the pop culture references.
Yeah. I love your Thomas the Tank Engine example. I'm not gonna promise not to steal it.
Oh, feel free. I actually used it last time I was on here talking with someone, and it seemed to really, resonate. And it worked. He acknowledged Thomas the Tank Engine chromosomes not real.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was a really good clip. So let's talk about the poll from this week before we move into more calls. We do have a couple more lines open. If you want to get in, we are going for another 2 hours. And of course, we will read your $5 or more super chats at the end. Get in your votes. Hashtag Team Lux or hashtag Team Jack for whoever you want to lose is going to do a funny punishment at the end. It's a little game we play. But yeah, make sure you get the $5 or more super chats with the hashtag in. So let's talk about this. This is kind of breaking news as of this week. In Kansas, they recently passed a law that I think both addresses the bathroom issue and the issue of changing your legal gender marker on your ID. Um, I'm from Kansas, and I'm so glad I got away from this fucking nightmare situation because so they've implemented actual criminal penalties, I think, about the bathroom thing, whereas their previous law that they passed just kind of said that you shouldn't use the bathroom and didn't specify. But the component that is of more immediate concern right this second is the issue of your driver's license. So I think as of today, actually, your driver's license in the state of Kansas, if you have previously changed your legal sex, so like they don't have an X option there. So if you went from F to M or M to F, they're basically saying even though it was legal for you to change it before, and the requirements in Kansas were that you needed a letter from your doctor that states that you've changed some aspect of your legal sex, so that you should be legally considered the opposite sex or whatever. So people went through a legal process to acquire that documentation to change their legal sex. And typically, what has happened is that you are grandfathered in, even if the law changes later. Kind of like if you guys remember when California made gay marriage legal, and then Proposition 8 passed and it made gay marriage illegal again, but it didn't nullify the marriages of the people who got married during that first little it's legal time. So it's quite noteworthy that Kansas has basically said to trans people, now that we've decided you can't change your legal sex marker anymore, or gender marker, whatever term you want to use, then your ID is actually no longer valid, like as of today. So if you have a driver's license, no, you don't. And that's kind of a huge concern because if I still lived in Kansas, it's like, oh, I can no longer legally drive anywhere without spending another $30 or whatever it is to get a new driver's license. We don't know if there's going to be any legal recourse for people who just now suddenly have been, had their legal changed gender marker revoked, and then they have to go take time off work to go get a new license. How are you supposed to do that if there's not even a grace period like they give you on your birthday? Like, oh, if your birthday falls on a Saturday and technically it expires that day, will you have a grace period of like a week or two to come in? I don't think they're giving it any kind of leeway like that. So yeah, I don't know if you've looked into it any further, Jack. I haven't really.
Yeah, it's really not great. I talked about this last night on my show, and like there's no grace period. People got letters yesterday saying that as of immediately they have to relinquish their driver's licenses. And the letter explicitly states, like, if you operate a motor vehicle, before you relinquish your license, you're in violation of this law. And additionally, like, the bathroom component of the bill, it bans on, publicly owned property, use of bathrooms um that don't align with your, gender assigned at birth. But also it essentially sets up a system where private businesses are going to be punished if and held liable if, like, trans people try to use the bathroom. So even if you are a friendly or sympathetic business in Kansas, they are looking to punish, any allies of trans people. Um, and that is contingent on individual citizens now being allowed to sue if they suspect someone in the bathroom that they used is trans. So like it has criminal components from the state, as well as empowering private citizens to exercise their bigotry. It's really it's pretty horrendous on practically every level.
I think it's one of the most severe developments I've seen, which is kind of weird. Like, it's actually a little bit surprising to me because I'm from Kansas City. Like, I'm from a very blue part of Kansas. But that just goes to show, like, every red state is gerrymandered to fucking back. Like, I think that a lot of states would be more purple if it weren't for the fact that they're so heavily gerrymandered, and like that means like a lot of voters are disenfranchised. Like, I would have expected this from Texas, and I've been like, my heart goes out to my trans friends in Texas, and I'm worried about them and everything, and I didn't expect Kansas. Like, so all the people I love in Kansas now are subject to additional types of scrutiny and restrictions, and, like, you know, again, legally, they cannot drive to work today. Like, "Oh, I gotta have somebody else drive me, or I gotta take a bus in a state with, like, fucking very shitty public transit options." So this is pretty horrendous, and, yeah, so they're forcibly revoking the legally issued IDs, and our question to you in the poll today, I don't know if it's still up in the chat for you guys or if you wanna just go comment on the post on the community tab, but, uh, the question ongoing from this point is, will this hold up in court? um, what's going to happen if a trans person is pulled over and they haven't gotten their new ID yet? Or, uh, is the ACLU going to be able to step in on this one and say, like, hey, we need an injunction? Like, we need an immediate injunction on this. That's what really needs to happen. And then will the court uphold the law and say, yes, it was totally fine for you to, with literally 1 day's notice, revoke people's legally obtained ID? And like the permission to drive the vehicle, which is what a driver's license is. Because it's all IDs, whether it's a driver's license or not, just like canceled as of today. So anyway, that's our horrendous news for the week. Thank you for joining us for the polls. Thank you for participating in your comments in the chat and everything. We've got a few callers waiting. Do you have call in studio pulled up? Is there any that
I
look good to
do.
you?
You know what? Your pick. I feel like I got my wish in the first caller, so you pick this one.
That was awesome. I'm always excited. Like, sometimes the lines fill up with like advice calls right away, and I'm like, okay, I'm glad that we got a heavy hitter right out the gate there. Let me look really quick. Let's see. Let's go ahead and quickly take Ali, she, they pronouns from Australia, who has a question about its pronouns. Ali, you're live on the line with Luxander and Jack. How's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Amazing.
I'm
Well,
doing great
you
too.
Yeah, yeah. You have a question about its pronouns. Go ahead and tell us about it. Lay it out on us.
Yeah, sure. I think there's a little bit of a delay when I can hear you, so sorry if I paused or talk over you or something.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a delay.
That's all right. So yeah, a friend of mine has recently started using it. Um, she uses she it, so I'll kind of use it interchangeably. I'm not trying to misgender it. Um, but it's kind of triggered a few thoughts and feelings in me, and it kind of made me a little bit uncomfortable, and made me kind of question why that might be, and how to kind of go about it. And I know you Lux use those pronouns as well, and so I thought you would be the perfect person to call in and kind of ask for some advice, or ways of kind of navigating the situation that might be respectful.
Sure. I understand that its pronouns can be kind of confronting. Um, I think that's part of why some people adopt them, because it does kind of directly challenge some of our notions around personhood and respect of identity and stuff like that. And it embraces a type of alienation that has been weaponized against us, much like the word queer. And there are people nowadays even who
Mm.
do not like the word queer, whether it's applied to them personally or they don't like the idea that that's kind of the umbrella term for the community now. Like, queer studies is the academic study of LGBTQ plus issues. And I know that some people are uncomfortable with it. And that normalization and reclamation is part of the process for us as a community and for individuals. Um, so I understand where that discomfort comes from. Like, it's a term that has been weaponized. I'm in the boat where I'm like, I call myself the T word, I call myself the F word. Like, I am just fully on board with like embracing the alienation part. It's like, you cannot hurt me by trying to weaponize something about myself that I am completely in alignment. Like, I don't have any problem being trans. I don't have any of those, like, I'm not trans enough kind of feelings or anything. Like, I'm in oneness with that, so it does not bother me. but I understand that some other people might be bothered by that. My way of kind of explaining this to people, I guess, is that like I may have some trauma around being called she, her pronouns. Um, and I might have some like issues with even hearing people say it or like with my dead name or something. Like, I guess focusing on the dead name part makes a little bit more sense. Like, if I have trauma associated with my dead name, but I meet a trans person who feels very affirmed by that name, am I going to stop being friends with that person or am I going to avoid using their name? Or is this a situation where it makes sense to kind of confront that to an extent and say, like, even though this doesn't work for me, it clearly is working for someone else? Um, so I guess like with that same sort of framework of like, I don't like its pronouns. I would be if you're like the person who's like, I would be upset if somebody called me its pronouns. And to be clear, Allie, I don't let everybody call me
Mm.
its pronouns. Like when I go on the show with Jimmy, a lot of the time I'll just tell people I use they pronouns because I know that they're going to be a shithead about it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you don't have permission. You're not allowed. It's like my friends are allowed to call me the F word, but you're weird. Now I'm not letting you call me the F word. Like that's not how this is going to go down. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like broadly my thoughts on the topic. I don't know if you have anything to respond or if Jack wants to hop in.
I'm content to let you take the lead on this one.
Fair.
Yeah. I feel like it hits harder coming from you.
Fair enough. Do you have any follow-up questions or comments, Allie? Anything else we can like clarify on the topic?
Yeah, bringing up the people feeling uncomfortable with using the word queer or using other pronouns. That's essentially where I was coming from in that. It was basically the discussion I had with my grandfather when I've been using they them pronouns predominantly for over 10 years now. But when I came out to him, he respectfully said that no, he didn't. It made him feel uncomfortable using just they them. He grew up country Australia, very unique kind of environment where that was how you show respect, was to use words like sir and purposely gender someone, and showing even just using like they, refusing to acknowledge someone's gender in that way was to him disrespectful. Same with queer. We don't even use the F word here, the F slur here. They use queer, and to him that was a really offensive term. That even though he acknowledged my gender and wanted to be affirming, he found it really, really uncomfortable personally, using terms like queer or not using gendered pronouns. And I think it's kind of how I feel as well with my friend now, is that I absolutely recognize and support its ability to take back that ownership of feeling objectified and then take back that ownership on itself and to use that moving forward. But it still feels disrespectful, like I'm actively objectifying her when I use it. And yeah, that's kind of still how I feel. And I was wondering if there's any way to approach that respectfully, where I can be affirming, but still, hold to my values of, treating, this person as a person, in my mind.
Sure. In my opinion, it's much more dehumanizing and disrespectful to presuppose that you know better than I do about my own pronouns. And I'm not saying to you, Allie, like just if somebody is confronting this issue of like, well, I feel like I'm being disrespectful by calling you by its pronouns. I'm like, well, I don't feel particularly respected when somebody declines to use the pronouns that I've stated are my primary pronouns. Like there was a point at which I was using like exclusively its online. I was like insistent on not using they pronouns for a period of time. I don't care as much now, but so it's like, it's not going to ever stop feeling weird if you avoid it. Like, I think that the thing to do is desensitization as much as possible and like reframe it and like think of it too as like, it is a term that can mean a lot of things. It's like a really, it's a cute kitten, or it's a girl, like, or the dragon whose gender is unknown, it is coming to rain fire down upon us, right? Like, so if you can maybe ask your friend, like, what is the association for them? Like, for it, sorry, a she, it, right? She, it. Um, so what is for her the association with the word it? Like, what is it trying to communicate, or what is it trying to embody by evoking this concept? And maybe coming to a greater understanding of that will help kind of contextualize it for you, so that it doesn't have that kind of constant negative connotation of like, haha, I'm in danger kind of thing. I don't know. How does that land? Is Colin Studio being a jerk today? We
I think this
we
is a
keep
web
losing
client
callers.
issue.
Web client. Oh, okay.
Oh, I mean,
Allie, if your phone went to sleep, you might have to tap the screen to wake it up so that you can talk again.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, sorry, it did go to sleep. Yeah, that's essentially the approach that I've been trying to and understand more about why how she feels and why she's using the pronouns, and then try to desensitize myself a bit as well.
yeah. Can I ask,
But I think
like, can I
oh,
ask, like, you feel it's disrespectful to it, right? Like that's like your hesitation, right? Like, do you understand like the root of why you feel that way?
yeah, I mean, I think it's just my own internal sensibilities, and I don't want to even inadvertently internalize you know objectifying somebody, especially not my friend. And even that's kind of how it feels. Like even if I am not consciously um, disrespecting them, I feel like there is still some aspect that is feels feels disrespectful. Is how
Yeah,
I feel with it.
I can maybe understand that, but I think that arises from like a category error in our brains. And the example I'm going to give is
Mm.
somewhat personally embarrassing because for almost my entire life, I've considered cucumbers vegetables. And I never really thought about that until just like the other day, and I realized I've been thinking of cucumbers as vegetables this entire time, and I thought it was really weird to just stick a cucumber in a glass of water like you're sticking a carrot in a glass of water. That doesn't make any sense to me. But suddenly I was like, wait a minute, it's in the fruit category. And then it changed my entire perspective on that cucumber going into like that glass of water, or like cucumbers just as like a food. And that category shift for me really made the difference in how I view like cucumbers being incorporated into things. And in a similar way, like kind of learning more about I agree with Lux here. Um Learning more about why your friend wants to use its pronouns could really help you create these two different categories for yourself of like, this is when disrespectful, this is when respectful. And that it sounds like it might make the
Mm.
difference for you.
Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense a bit. That switching it to more consciously assigning respect to it. That's probably a good way to look at it, I think.
Yeah. It's a process, I'm not gonna say it's gonna get easy overnight. It's gonna take incremental progress, and like eventually you'll feel just as kind of whatever about its pronouns as you do about, the word queer, or, any given term that, like, the more charged it is, like the more weight we give it emotionally and mentally, like the more power it has over us. And so, breaking away from that it's a slow process and it'll take a bit. But I'm glad that what your goal is here seems to be to affirm your friend and try to work through your issues about it instead of like, can I just avoid using the pronouns? Like you're giving it a good effort, and it'll get easier. It'll come around at some point.
Oh, yeah, I always recognize that it was very much a me problem and should not be its problem. I think that's what my question was more about, is how to go about it rather than refusing to go about it. But thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks for calling, Allie. We appreciate you and hope to talk to you again sometime.
Bye.
Okay. Wow. We've got several calls waiting today. I took point on that one. Is there any that are jumping out at you right now? Oh, by the way, the chat just now, the poll came up in the chat. Whoever is the loser of today's vote has to defend a silly position. That's what we do. We do a little hashtag vote with your $5 or more super chats, and whoever gets the fewest votes has to spend 2 minutes defending a silly position. So today we've got dragons are inherently transgender. Congressional sessions have to be conducted in Speedos, or fruit/veggie abolitionism, which feels open-ended. But get your votes in the chat, and you'll help influence how we close out the show today. But yeah, Jack, are there any calls that you're keen on?
I honestly, all of them seem really good to me. Like I like all of these topics. I think we'd have a blast.
Okay. I'm thinking maybe 10-4.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Cool. All right, we are going to bring in Grant, they, them pronouns from Texas, who has questions about the distinction between sex and gender. Grant, you are live on the line with Luxander and Jack. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going
Pretty
great.
good so far. Yeah.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Lay it on us. What's your question today?
All right, so you hold that sex and gender are two different categories, right?
Yeah.
That is the academic understanding, yeah.
Okay, so basically, if sex and gender are two different categories, when somebody says they're a transgender woman or a transgender man, is that a claim about their gender or is that a claim about their sex?
I mean,
I think usually their gender, right? Go ahead,
yeah,
Jack.
usually gender, since there's the gender part of transgender attached there.
Okay, but like the trans part is short for transition, right?
No.
No, that transgender is one word.
So trans is short for transgender, which it means like having a gender identity that's different to the one that you were assigned at birth, or that's different to what you're expected to have based on your biological sex. So that's a common misconception, though, that trans is short for transition. It's just short for transgender.
Okay, then. So if somebody was born like as a biological male, let's say, and their gender identity is of a woman, it would be a transgender woman.
Well,
Yeah.
so yes, in general, but I'm going to add a massive caveat there, which is that doctors, when a baby is born, aren't running like tests on chromosomes or tests on like genetics, generally speaking. Usually how it works is baby come out, they look at the genitals and make their best guess. And that's what they assign. So typically then we have like the phrase, gender assigned at birth, because it's basically a doctor taking their best guess based on genitals and the statistical likelihood that your gender identity is going to align with, the genital situation you got going on.
Oh, I was under the impression that they assigned sex at birth, not a gender. Okay, that's interesting. But I do have another question then that follows. So,
well, I mean, just
categories.
to clarify, they're assigning what they think your sex is, which is kind of like gender. They're handing you your gender card, but they aren't doing like a full battery of any kind of like establishing what your sex is, other than looking at genitals.
It's kind of a two-part thing. Like I would say the doctor assigns your
Well-
sex, and then your parents assign you your gender, usually based on your sex. Like your parents say, it's a girl, we're gonna name her Rosie, and all this kind of stuff. So like they both are inflicted at the same time in different ways.
Okay, well, let's say it was funny, but like hypothetically, if somebody was born in the wrong body, and I'm not being facetious there, like if their gender identity is innately of a woman, and it's always been that way, and everybody has always treated them that way, and the doctor even said that their gender was of a woman, but their biological sex would be that of a male because they have male characteristics and male chromosomes and such, but they always identify as a woman, and there was never any time that they weren't a woman. Would they still be a gender woman?
Okay, so typically the situation you described is not going to occur, but let me kind of put it in a way that might actually occur. If I had a baby right now and it had a penis, I would probably not make a point to raise that child as a boy. So if I was like, yeah, I'm just going to use they, them pronouns, I'm just going to give them a gender neutral sounding name like Taylor, or something, then the idea is like my child never had an assigned gender. So maybe if they tell me when they're 5 years old or 3 years old, which is basically the developmental age where children can understand their gender, if they tell me at age 3 that they're a girl, and then I'm like, cool, thank you for telling me that. I will now raise you as a girl. Cool. What girl things do you want to try doing? Whatever. Then like we would still use the term trans because there is still like a societal expectation that a child born with a penis like should, quote unquote, should be a boy. But I'm totally here for your hypothetical future situation in which none of these concepts exist anymore. Like maybe in the Star Trek future, there is no such thing as assigning gender. You get our best guess of your sex designation, and that has nothing to do with your personality, and we don't need to apply a term to it at all. I'm on board for it. It's just like in a practical sense, not the situation that we're dealing with now. Like the child is still going to need cross-sex hormones if they or puberty blockers if they want to go through a physical transition because their natal body is likely still going to go down a testosterone pathway. So like it's still useful, the terminology. Transsexual is an outdated term that some people will still use to be like, I mean, sometimes I'll say I'm a non-binary transsexual because I want to call attention to the fact that non-binary people go through biological transition. But yeah, so it's just like, when are these terms going to stop being useful? I don't know. That's a great question.
Okay, but you would say in that hypothetical, they might not be considered a trans woman.
No, yeah, they would still. So the thing is, it's like, if your gender is different to what you're expected to have based on your biological sex, like if your gender and your biological sex are not in alignment, that's what transition means. Or sorry, that's what transgender means.
Well, hold
Love to
on.
my words.
The expectation part is a little bit confusing because what if the societal norms were inverted and if you were born biologically male, but your expectation was to be a female, but then to be a woman, but then your gender identity was that of a man, would you then be a trans man in the other way?
I imagine that society would have fundamentally different language to describe the phenomenon of gender.
But also
Let's say hypothetically they have our language.
Gender is really flexible. Like kind of, the concept of what was masculine and what was feminine in societies before ours varies greatly. Like stiletto high heels were invented for men, specifically to ride to war in. Like,
yeah, for horses and stuff.
yeah, and then they became a woman thing. Pants were originally only a man thing, and now they're a man and woman thing. Like gender and gender expectations are moving all the time everywhere, and what gender expectations might be in New York City vary from what gender expectations might be in, the deep South. Like there are a lot of different ways that gender is wibbly wobbly. And so yeah, it's a nebulous societally constructed concept.
Okay, so if somebody is a transgender woman. So they were born biologically with male characteristics, but they identify as a woman. If they then change their mind or they have some sort of revelation, and now they identify as a man in the gender category, are they now a transgender man?
Oh, they would just be a cisgender man.
Okay. Another thing, you use the words masculine and feminine to describe the gender roles. Aren't those biological terms?
No, like different activities are coded as masculine or feminine in different societal makeups. So like what is considered typically a male behavior or man behavior rather, or what is typical woman behavior, again, that's not related to biology in any sense, really. It's just how
Well,
different societies have coded different sets of ideas and qualities, characteristics, etc. It's pretty arbitrary.
well, there is such a thing as a masculine biological characteristic, right? You can use the terms
I mean,
masculine and feminine
I
in
would
a
say it's
biological sense,
a
such as
male
anatomy.
characteristic, yeah.
I think that people do
I
use
think
these
it's also
terms, like
masculine.
the application of the terms. I'm sure that there are lots of people who would say like a chiseled jaw on a man is a masculine feature. That, yeah, this is like the way that our language is
But
structured
you think
around
they'd be
this.
wrong?
So I'm just saying that the language around this can lack specificity. So the more specific we can be, or the more caveats or context we can provide to something, makes it more useful. I don't take issue personally with the idea that like, a very muscular man is masculine, in a physical sense, even though like, I mean, the acquisition of muscles is a gendered behavior in some contexts. Like men wanting to be big and muscular has to do with their gender. So it's one of those things where like biology and gender identity they're definitely related. Like I'm like nobody here is going to say that there is like no relationship between those things. Like that's part of what defines trans people as trans is that like most people have a very close relationship between their biological sex and their gender identity, but some people deviate from that. So it's like, yeah, and your gender identity is informed by where you came from as a trans person. It's like, the definition of trans woman, as we've established, is like, yeah, my biology says that I'm supposed to be male, but I identify more with womanhood and I want to have female characteristics. And so I transition for that. But like, none of us are unaware of our biological features. And so it's like, it can be kind of hard to narrow down the specificity of language because our like language itself is not structured very cleanly around this like I don't want to say like new, like relatively new distinction that we're creating in an academic sense. Like we're formalizing things right now that like we haven't gotten a concrete endpoint, and we might never. Like the language is probably going to continue to shift over time. The way that we talk about this now is probably going to be considered wildly outdated and out of touch in 30 years. Like I don't know.
Okay, I guess my main problem with that is if you really do hold that sex and gender are distinct categories, and you said like if my biology says I'm male but I identify as a woman, well, if they're two distinct categories, then your biology shouldn't say you identify as anything. They're different categories.
Well, we're talking about a gender identity, right?
Yeah, I know.
We're
If
we're
your
not talking about
biological
a
sex is
sex identity.
you're male or female, and that shouldn't
As I
say anything
said,
about what your gender
they are
identity is.
they are typically associated very closely. Like in 97% of the population, gender identity is in alignment with biological sex. Now, there is also a whole fucking can of worms that we could get into about whether the brain is one of the organs of sex, and that us having a brain thing that makes us feel like we have a gender identity that's different to the rest of our biology. Like there are very interesting types of research looking into like the estrogen pathways in the brains of trans women and like lots of different other things like that. There's nothing conclusive at this time. And I honestly am not really interested in finding like the trans part of the brain because then come lobotomies. But so there's clearly a relationship. And so I'm not trying to say that they are like completely separate. I guess like they inform each other. They are distinct, but they inform each other. Or as Arden put in the chat, like they're not orthogonal. It's not like they're, you know, completely disconnected. It's just that first, for the purposes of describing, like, practically, there are two different things going on here, where clearly there's like a biological component. Like, can you produce sperm or do you produce ovum? Like, are you growing the beard naturally, or do you need a testosterone supplement to help you? You know, and there's plenty of men out there who can't grow a beard, and like they want help with it, even though they're not trans. Uh, so yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just like, there's
Actually,
this
that's
is a
kind of interesting
continuing
because that's
developmental
sorry.
field. Yeah, go ahead, Grant. What were you saying?
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting because that's kind of in my analysis of the whole looks maxing movement. If you've ever seen that, it's like we've had this for a couple of decades now of people who are born as a certain sex who want to be the opposite gender and perceived that way. But now you've got a whole phenomenon of people who are born biologically in alignment with their gender categories, but they want to be perceived as more exaggerated in that feature. Like you want to see looks want to be more masculine when they're already male. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, I
little
mean,
goofy.
I think a lot of the looks maxing stuff is born out of like you know, a deep desire to appeal to other, you know, in particular, I've basically only ever seen this in reference to men trying to impress other men. And
So
I think
true.
I think kind of like how in the 1980s He-Man was like set up as like this peak of masculinity, you know, and like He-Man wasn't all muscled for girls watching He-Man. He-Man was muscled for the boys watching He-Man to present like this is what peak masculinity means. And I think we're just seeing a very different, very online version of that unfolding uh, right now for young men in particular.
Mm. That is interesting, but I guess one of the biggest issues I'm having right now is when you say that somebody born biologically male is typically associated with the gender category of man, or is expected to be, or society has, you know, that expectation that they're gonna be. If you're placing the weight on the transgender part of that, your categorization on the expectation or the typical association, you'd have to admit that if that wasn't expected, like if somebody who's male is not expected to be a man, or they're typically not associated, then you wouldn't use the term transgender, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, if the
if we
context was
yeah.
completely different, the language would be completely different. I agree with you. It's just that I'm describing the situation as it is. Sorry, Jack, what were you gonna say?
Oh, yeah, language is born out of utility. So
Yes.
yeah, if we had a situation where it no longer served utility to have that language, we wouldn't be using that language.
Yeah, like, oh, and this is a great example that I think of sometimes. The word atheist, we shouldn't need that word. The only reason we need that word is because religion is so dominant in our societies. Like, I don't know if you know this, Grant, but like the line is a secular, humanist, atheist-oriented network. So even though we're focusing on trans issues here, we are focusing on it from the skeptic atheist perspective. And so, like, yeah, in a hypothetical future where religion isn't everywhere, maybe we will not need the word atheist because everybody doesn't believe in God, right? But we currently exist in a world where it's a useful distinction to make when we're communicating about like personal identity and beliefs. So like, yeah, I agree with you that the word, whoa, that was loud. The word trans wouldn't need to exist in the hypothetical Star Trek future where we don't assign gender. Or like, yeah, maybe the word would still exist, but it would only describe people who require like medical treatment or something. Or maybe there will be a brand new word that describes those people seeking that medical treatment, and like the gender part isn't even really a factor. Or maybe the human species will evolve beyond the need for what is it, anisogamy, the like two gamete sexual reproduction thing. Like, I don't know. I'm on board. I'm like excited to see what that future is going to be like.
Okay, yeah. I guess another question would be that if biological sex and gender are distinct, and you know nobody's ever claiming to make a transition among their sex. Nobody's claiming that they're actually changing their chromosomes from fundamentally different biological and anatomical level. Is there actually any logical problem with just referring to people as male or female?
Yeah, there is. You know, like I what one because trans people do change their biological sex either surgically or with hormones, and that fundamentally does change your biological sex. Or it shifts where your body or your secondary sex characteristics might appear on like some kind of spectrum, if you will. But for example, there's a lot of problems with referring to people just based on sex because you don't know what other people's sex is. You know, when you see like a woman walking down the street, you don't know that that's a woman because you like saw their genitals. You know, you don't know what their sex is because you didn't test their chromosomes. You aren't really engaging with anything other than their gendered appearance, right? And your preconceived notions that you've learned from society that are markers of like, oh, man, woman, they, them, you know, etc. Like in practical terms, doctors are really the only people who are going to ever be engaging with your sex or maybe some sexual partners. But for practical everyday purposes, like we can't allow for just other individuals to violate our bodily autonomy and privacy just so that they know what pronouns to use for us.
Okay, I guess two issues with that. First is I don't think you can actually fundamentally change the anatomical structure of a male or a female. I think that is something so fundamental. You can't actually change it because it has to do with the development. Every single characteristic that you have is developed in a specific way in accordance with your biological sex because of your hormones and because of your DNA. Your DNA is the information that informs your body's development, and that is specific to gender. Or sorry.
Can I ask if you think, like, if somebody who gets a kidney transplant, is that not changing their biology?
That would be altering it, but not fundamentally.
Yeah, but it's a different DNA from a different person being put into your body. Does that not alter like your body's overall DNA structure, its overall makeup on a pretty fundamental level?
No, it would alter it holistically. You could no longer say that it was identical to what you were before, but it isn't.
Yeah, because you have different DNA in you.
By doing a kidney transplant, your foot is still the same as your foot was before the transition. If what you have as a female is a female foot, and then you and then you like have a surgery and you remove your
weird.
vagina,
Grant,
you still have
that's weird.
female foot.
That's weird. That's a weird thing to say that you have a female foot. That's a weird thing to say because here's the thing is that all of your cells, hold on, all of your cells possess the ability, well, unless you have like androgen insensitivity syndrome or something similar to that. But for the average person, all of your body's cells are responsive to the sex hormones. So like, for example, you said female feet. Well, did you know that trans women's feet sometimes shrink when they've been on estrogen for a number of years? Did you know that the way that a trans woman smells changes the longer she's been on hormones? Like even if she hasn't had bottom surgery, her genitals will start to smell more like a vulva than they smell like a penis. Like you grow your own boobs with hormones because your cells are programmed to receive the instructions. So even if it is an exogenous hormone, as in one that you administer medically rather than one that your body creates on its own, your entire body is capable of responding to those hormones and changes on a fundamental level. So your chromosomes don't change, but literally all of your cellular information gets updated.
You don't think there's such a thing as a female foot?
I mean, if you want to say that there is such thing as like estrogen makes a female foot, like I kind of contradicted myself a little bit. If a trans woman's feet shrink when she's on estrogen, then I agree with you that there may be such a thing as a female foot, but there is not such a thing as an immutable female foot.
Well, when we're talking about the whole of the body, if you replace every single part of the body, if the body is made up of a whole of particulars, if you replace every single part with a sexual counterpart of male to female or whatever, you would no longer have that body. The body's identity would not be the same. It's not, you cannot possibly transition holistically from male to female.
Yeah, actually, I just said that you do.
Also, Grant, do you know do you when you're using the word holistically a lot, um, did you know every cell in your body is replaced over the course of a 10-year cycle?
I didn't know that.
I think
Yeah,
accepting your neurons in your
with
brain.
some minor exceptions, um, but even your bones on a 10-year time scale get replaced. So we're
No,
kind
but the
of veering
identity
into
retains,
like a
right?
ship of we're kind of getting into a ship of Theseus situation where you're like, the ship of Theseus has to be a man. And we're telling you, well, the ship of Theseus can, if you make some alterations to the different parts that you're putting into the ship of Theseus, we could call the ship of Theseus a girl. Or a they them, a non-binary ship of Theseus, right? Like, part of what makes our bodies build and grow and change is our hormone, the hormones we put into our bodies, right? Like I for example, I think most men probably wouldn't be all that happy if suddenly they started taking estrogen. Like, you started slipping a man estrogen, I think they'd be pretty upset because it would change their body in a pretty deep and profound way, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So like, clearly there is a way in which our bodies are malleable over time, like our cells completely shift over time. At hormones play a
Well, hold
huge
on.
role in those shifts, and like clearly there is some malleability here.
Yeah, but you can't violate the law of identity. Like you said, it takes like
What does
10
that
years,
mean?
but the cells within my bone are going to renew or change over time. Yeah, but my bone, like the bone in my wrist, is the same bone in my wrist that I had when I was 5. It's the same
That's the
No,
bone.
it's
ship
You
of
can't
not.
Theseus
violate the law
argument.
of identity.
No,
It's
that's called
not the
ship of
same.
Theseus. Do you
What'd you
not?
say?
Sorry, we keep referencing it. Grant, do you know what the ship of Theseus is? Are you familiar with that story?
No, no.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, cool. So the
Can I
idea is, oh,
go
you
for
know,
it?
if you want to go for it, you can. Yeah, please.
Yeah, basically the ship of Theseus is the thought experiment that Theseus has a ship, a famous sailing vessel, and as it gets used over time, the different planks of the ship of Theseus are replaced with new planks. And the thought being that eventually every single plank of the ship of Theseus is a different plank than what was originally called the ship of Theseus. And yet we keep calling it the ship of Theseus and keep saying it's the same ship. And at what point does it stop being the same ship?
Personally, I don't think it does. You can't violate the law of identity.
What is the law of identity?
That things retain its identity over time.
Cutty Sark? Do you know the Cutty Sark?
What's that?
Okay, so the Cutty Sark is a different ship. I think it's a real ship that actually existed, and it burned down in a fire. And then they rebuilt it, and they called it the Cutty Sark. Is that still the same ship?
Nope.
Okay, so you're understanding that, like, so it's interesting. It's interesting, right? It's a kind of cool philosophical topic. Like, if you're replacing each piece of something, or let's bring it down to something even more simple. Let's say I have a broom, and nowadays the broom has like a part that screws onto the bottom, like the brush part screws onto the bottom. So let's say my broom handle breaks, and I replace the broom handle, and then shortly thereafter, my dog eats the bottom part, and now I have to buy a new bottom part. Is it the same broom? Does it like maintain its identity, or is it a new thing now?
It was just the bottom part of the broom that was replaced.
Both parts were replaced. The handle broke, so I had to
Or both
replace the
parts.
handle, and then 6 months later, the bottom part got destroyed, and I had to replace the bottom part and screw it onto the new handle.
Yeah, I'd say that's the same broom.
Okay, so that's a fascinating philosophical position that you can take, and there is no right answer, I think. I mean, it's like the very interesting crossover that this has is if you think about the transporters from Star Trek and how they functionally kill you and then rebuild a new creature that looks like you and has all your memories. We're Cutty Sarking. on the transporter. There's a great video by CGP Grey called "The Trouble with Transporters" if you want to watch it. But I can agree that we are ship of Theseusing our way through our lives. Like, we maintain a story. Wow, again, the really loud noise. That was crazy. We
Oh,
maintain
sorry. I'm at work right now.
It's cool. We maintain a sense of continuity about our identities by the story and our memories of our experiences. But like I am physically not at all the same person that I was when I was a child. Like, all of my body parts have been replaced.
Really?
So because all of my body parts have been replaced, and also because I have a completely different set of like values and experiences now that I didn't have when I was 7 years old. Like, I remember that person, and I remember I like have that person inside me still, but I am totally different emotionally and physically because I don't have any of the same body parts as I do. So if we circle this back around to like gender and the fact that all of your cells can respond to the hormones, like we have differences in our brains when we start hormones. We have differences in our skin texture. The size of our feet change. Some trans women get shorter, like they lose inches off of their total height after being on estrogen for a number of years. They develop, big juicy thighs, the way that women have big juicy thighs. Like all of your body. And if you do that for 10 years on this idea that like all of your cells get replaced after a 10-year cycle or 7 to 10-year cycle, then like that person has fundamentally changed all of the cells in their body to be female ones.
You don't think that, okay, this is just a little bit weird for me. So me, as in Grant, my identity as me, the thing we're referencing when we say Grant, that retains since my conception, since my beginning of existence. That is the identity of me as an entity, as a thing. My identity as what I am retains over time. I don't ever become something that I am not.
Wait, so are
And
you
do.
still a baby?
What do you say?
Like, are you still a baby?
If you're going to make the distinction between who I was and who I am, then I was never a baby. What I am now is distinct from anything in the past. You can't even say that you were a baby because you is distinct. So I can say, yeah, well, I'm not still a baby, but my identity has retained. You can have changes, but the identity does not change.
But we're not really talking about identity when you're asking questions about hormonal makeup. So I'd like to circle back around to that. Like, when you were asking, like, you don't have, you were saying like, okay, if you start out with a male foot, then you still have a male foot. Like, I disproved that by telling you that all of the cells in your body respond if you start taking estrogen, and that includes your feet shrinking. And after 10 years, you don't have all of the same cells anymore. So like when we're talking about biological changes, and we are going to have to come to an end to this conversation soon. We have a shit ton of callers waiting. We are not going to have time to get to all of them, but can you understand at least the perspective that I'm sharing, that like your body does fundamentally change after a certain duration of exposure to hormones if you're transitioning?
I accept changes. I'm not denying changes. And I agree with you that there can be some sort of fundamental changes, but I just disagree that the identity completely fundamentally changes, that what you're referring to in the now is completely distinct, it's separated from the thing in the past. So, for instance, if you want to say
Grant, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
I'm agreeing with you.
The history of the identity, the history of your identity does matter. That's why it's called a trans woman, because her history as someone who was assigned male at birth and who probably grew up as a boy that's an acknowledgement of the continuation of her identity from one state of being to another.
Would you say there was a transition?
But that's a great way to end this. Thank you so much, Grant. This has been a very stimulating conversation. I hope we answered some of your questions. And, if you want to call back sometime and shoot the shit some more, I'm happy to have you on.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
That was great.
That was fun. We got to throw out the ship of Theseus. You got to bring up the Cutty Sark. That's cool.
I'm so
was so
excited.
fun.
I was like, that was my time. Somebody in the chat's like, why are we talking about the Cuddy Sark? Listen, that's a great By the way, I wholeheartedly think that CGP Grey video is so good.
Oh, I when I was a kid, I didn't think about transporters at all. Now, I would if Star Trek Future happened today, I would never get in a transporter. Never.
I don't know if I would care that much. I don't like. I'm not sure. I haven't decided yet. Well, let's not get hung up on it though, because let's talk about that some other time.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to conceptualize the conversation though. Okay, so lines are full. We are not accepting any more calls because we don't have time to get to all of them. We have like about 40 minutes left for taking calls, and then we're going to switch over to super chats. So don't forget to get your $5 or more super chats in. Those are the ones we read out loud. $5 or more, and get your hashtag vote Team Lux or Team Jack for whoever you want to win or lose the competition to do the silly punishment at the end of the show. What's winning right now, by the way, on that? Oh, well, duh. Dragons are inherently transgender is winning. So I have a feeling about who I know is going to lose the fucking game today. It's going to be me.
I don't know. Maybe I like talking about dragons. Maybe people
Me too.
will vote for
Listen,
me.
they're not on screen right now because of the split screen, but literally there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dragons right there, and then one dragon egg, which you can kind of see right there. Like there's another one over there on the calendar. So yeah, we're full up. We're full up on dragons. Do you have a figurine?
I do.
Yeah, that's cute. What is it with trans people and dragons? Literally, also Arden. So all 3 of the trans people running this show right now are like weirdly into dragons, and that's very fun for me. Yes. Okay. So I actually have to go to the restroom. So let's get this next one started, and I'll kind of let you field it. So we're gonna kind of be pretty choosy, and I apologize if we don't get to your calls today. We ended up having way more calls than we were expecting. So thank you all so much for getting in here. I feel like 11.5 might be our best next one. What do you think?
Let's go for it.
All right, cool. We're going to bring in Noai, any all pronouns from Spain, who has a question about gender ideology. Noai, Noai, please tell me how to pronounce your name. You're live on the line with Luxander and Jack. How's it going? Did I not bring them in? Nope. Come on, call in studio. Let's go. Let's go. Wake up. Hey,
hello?
You're here.
Hello?
Please tell me how to pronounce your name. I can hear you.
Noai. Yeah.
Noai, cool.
Hi.
All right. I'm going to let you tell Jack what your question is, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, what's up?
So, okay, let's see. So I've called a couple of times in the past, and it was for the same reason. I just feel like I didn't properly explain my point of view, so I'm gonna try again. So I have quite a bit of hot takes around the whole trans topic, but I just don't talk to people about it because I've like no desire to cause suffering, I guess. Like trans people already have enough social issues to like be adding on to them, right?
Perfect time to ask your questions then.
Yeah, okay. So the reason I'm calling is basically because like Donald Trump has been elected twice to the US presidency, and that is just insane. Like it's I've lost all hope in humanity levels of insane. And
yeah,
like in order to like not go and kill myself tomorrow, I have to like believe that there's something that those of us who are rational could have done better to avoid this. And I like when I look at the whole political situation, I feel like the trans topic is a huge part of why there has been such a shift to the right, despite the candidate being so obviously like horrible. And yeah,
why do you feel that?
So partly like I've never shifted to the right, but I like about 10 years ago, I watched like Ben Shapiro and like Steven Crowder and like those kinds of people for a bit, like just half a year maybe. And I didn't shift to the right basically because I'm an anti-theist, but like I can see how someone who has similar views as me when it comes to like gender and this whole thing could have shifted to the right if they didn't have some of the other beliefs that I do have. So
Okay, do you want to
yeah.
just give us like an example of one of those?
Okay, so one of them is what I told Arden in the call screener. I think because I feel like this, I think a lot of other people also feel like this, is the case that the whole gender ideology thing is sort of regressive. I feel like we were on track to overcome the idea that that people ought to be a certain way on the basis of their biological sex. I feel like we were on track to get rid of that, and instead of continuing on that track, we kind of pivoted into saying, no, okay, gender is a real thing. We should take it seriously. We should, like, instead of trying to bring the remaining pillars of this social performance down, I feel like we are bringing them back up, and yeah.
Okay,
I think it's bad. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'll respond to that. So it seems like you're coming at this from a number of different angles. One, you're using a lot of I feel language, or it
Yeah.
seems like language. And to me, that indicates that you're not really going off of any hard data, you're going off of more vibes, right?
Yeah.
And like the vibes of specifically like the far right, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, these are not, moderate conservatives. They weren't even back in the day, like and I guess I would just say that what has happened isn't so much that, oh, transgender people went too far and now, the concept of gender is crumbling all of society. Because the far right has always been the ones that are policing gender identity. They've always, like, in some cases, literally policing gender identity by passing laws. And that wasn't different like 10 years ago. They also were attacking trans people 10 years ago. And I know that because I also paid attention to what they were doing 10 years ago. And like, they haven't really shifted their rhetoric that much. You know, um, what has happened is that the language that they used for their primary targets from like 10 years ago, which were, lesbians and gays and, queer people, they shifted their attack from focusing on those people to attacking an even smaller minority, trans people. And because
Yeah.
most people in America, for example, like we'll keep it America centric here, um, because most people in America knew a gay person, knew like lesbian, knew someone who was queer, it became a harder and harder attack, especially after marriage equality passed back in 2015, right? And so what wound up happening is marriage equality really put a nail in a coffin back then. And so the far right had to take some time to figure out, well, who do we attack now? And I a lot of my work on my stream is covering far right movements and far right individuals and like the think tanks that normalize or popularize different talking points. And one of the people to pay attention to where the far right is getting all of their talking points from is a man by the name of Christopher Rufo. And he is essentially, his entire career is working as a man who finds different ways to create wedge issues or demonize different groups of people in a way that will resonate with conservatives en masse, as well as the far right. And what the far right does is they take that talking point and they run farther with it than mainstream conservatives are willing to go, because they know it'll get them attention, it'll get them views, and also it profits them, like, directly. And so what happened was Christopher Rufo, and you might remember some of this, especially if you were paying attention to conservative media. Christopher Rufo was the guy who came up with critical race theory as like a wedge issue, and is the one who injected that into mainstream discourse. And you'll notice now almost no one talks about critical race theory anymore. And that's because he continued to come up with additional talking points, one of them being trans kids in sports. And that is the one that we are currently really engaged with when it comes to trans people in America, because that wedge issue um, broke the coalition that had formed around like LGBTQ rights and issues. You got far right, sponsored groups like LGB without the T. You got like folks like Gavin Newsom going out there and being like, well, this wedge issue, I have to agree with the framing from the far right on this. And it that's Christopher Rufo's entire job, right? Is to find those issues that give credence or some small semblance of credence to very conservative ideas. And the issue is with trans people, there aren't as many of us. And like in some cases, these states are fear mongering around one trans high schooler in an entire state full of millions of people. Like they have created this moral panic on purpose and artificially in order to fearmonger against trans people. And this wasn't because like, oh, academics were going too far. It wasn't because oh no, now my daughter has to use they them pronouns for one of her friends. Like it was just because a lot of conservatives don't believe that they know a trans person. And because they don't know us, we exist outside of their, bubble of people that they extend empathy to. Unlike a lot of gay people, lesbians, bisexuals, queer people, etc. We are easier to demonize because we are an other to a lot of folks in America. And so that in turn has snowballed, and Republicans now use us as a useful scapegoat. It's a lot easier to give massive amounts of tax dollars and tax credits to the wealthiest people to ever exist on the face of the earth and look like you're still doing something that isn't just robbing your constituents blind if you are passing laws that demonize trans people, right? Like it makes it look like you're doing something when all you're doing is getting away with theft. And that's essentially the situation that has unfolded all across America through the Republican Party. It's why, like, the state of Kansas's legislature just overruled a governor veto with a 2/3 majority in order to legalize hunting trans people. That's not a response to like academics saying, "Oh, maybe we should use the correct pronouns for trans people." That's because they're specifically trying to conceal their own massive amount of theft from the American people and the American taxpayer. It's because they are all trying to benefit the Epstein class, and they're desperate to do it. And so, like, they're willing to demonize us up to and including it putting us in prison for just existing. And like, that's not our fault. That is purely an outgrowth of their own greed.
I get that. Yeah, there's like America's kind of fucked. But like, what I'm trying to say is that I don't know. I feel like we could have done things differently, or you. I don't know. I don't know if I'm included in the. But
Listen.
like, I saw this video recently of some woman. I think it was like a doctor testifying, or I don't know, somewhere. She was asked if men can get pregnant, and she was like so scared to give an answer like I feel like it's those kinds of clips and like I feel like 5 years of left-wing people refusing to grant like quote unquote obvious points, and like small things like this add up, and
So
enough.
you're blaming the left, a group that holds no systemic power.
I mean, I'm not like.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
okay.
maybe you don't intend for it to be
blaming,
this, but what is happening is a form of victim blaming. Like, well, if you had
No,
just
I disagree.
maybe capitulated more. I mean, you can
Well,
disagree. That is what
No,
you
I
are
disagree.
describing.
Can I?
No, the thing is,
Can
the
can I
right is either
interject here?
evil or stupid, so I don't expect to be able to improve their behavior.
Well,
so I'm
so
I'm trying to improve the one that I of the people that I
do you
believe
value
in.
truth? Do you value like the truth and like scientific honesty?
Yeah.
Okay, so should we lie in order to coddle the ignorant?
What kind of liar are you?
Well,
thinking about
because
when you ask that?
in the question of like, can a man get pregnant? The answer to that is yes, because trans men exist. Right?
That's just a
Like,
question of language. Like we wouldn't be
trans
lying
men
if we said
exist?
yes or if we said no.
But
Like,
you're
can a man
saying
get
that
pregnant? It's just a matter of definition. So
no. It's not, because a man is an identity. Like, man is an identity. You identify as a man, right? Like a man, not you specifically, but a hypothetical man is a man because they identify as a man, right?
I have. Yeah, I did say I have hot takes. I have an issue with the whole concept of identity as well, but
Okay, I mean, like, just for the sake of argument, you're a left. Put yourself in the mind of someone who's on the left. If you are on the left and you agree with the idea that trans men are men, and somebody asks you, can men get pregnant? Your answer is just yes, unambiguously. And
sure.
I think the instance you're talking about here is from like January. Josh Hawley was asking like OBGYNs questions and asked, can men get pregnant? And their response was, well, I care for many patients of various gender identities, and your question is politically charged, which is true, right? That is an accurate response. And so, like, I'm not entirely sure how it's the fault of like a doctor giving like a pretty nuanced and like cautious response to a bad faith actor who is looking to portray the left and portray science itself as full of lies, as
I feel
co-opted.
I feel like you should be
by
able to realize that the right is trying to portray the left as some sort of cult that doesn't
Whose
allow
fault is that?
certain things
I'm
to
sorry.
be said.
I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Whose fault is that?
I don't like how you keep asking this because
Yeah. So the thing is that what you're doing is you are trying to. Yeah, but there is blame. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to refine. It's like what's happening right now.
It's not blame. It's
Oh my God.
utilitarianism. I
Can you
don't believe
please
the right is able.
listen? I'm going to take my space and I will mute you if I cannot have an opportunity to say my piece here. I understand the impulse. Like listen, when a woman gets sexually assaulted, there are a million what ifs going through her mind. And there are women around her who are going, okay, well, you did this. I'm never going to do that again. And like, so yes, in the group that is under attack, there is a desperation in trying to find, like trying to thread the needle as to the exact right things to do or not do in order to avoid violence against them. That doesn't change the fact that it is ultimately the responsibility of the men doing the attacking that we should be addressing that problem, and that, there's a systemic issue of men not being punished enough for those kind of crimes and stuff. So yes, when we're talking about the anti-trans backlash, there is some amount of like grasping at straws to go, and like there are trans people who do this, who are like, listen, non-binary people, you make us look bad. You're not valid, because they're desperately trying to avoid being in the victim group. But that's not helpful. And it's especially not helpful if somebody outside of that class tells that class how they should be responding. So like you use any all pronouns, you have a masculine sounding voice. If you identify as a man or you operate in the world as a man in any capacity, you telling a woman how she should have done this or that to avoid getting fired or avoid getting sexually assaulted or like all of the discrimination that women face would obviously not be appropriate. It would be a form of victim blaming. So similarly, for people who are not trans or who, are skeptical of the idea of being trans or, use terms like gender ideology, for you as an outsider to the situation to be saying, well, maybe you should do this or you should stop doing that. Like, I'm sorry, but that is victim blaming. You're trying to say like, maybe you could be doing something differently and the virulent attacks against you would let up. We are not to blame for any of this.
I would also just add here that it's not just on trans issues. The MAGA movement here in the United States is married to the anti-empiricist movement, the anti-scientific movement. It's why we get RFK Jr.
Yeah.
It's why we've got Jay Bhattacharya. Like it's why we have a bunch of these people who reject, scientific and medical procedures that have been backed by over like multiple centuries of science. RFK Jr. is in charge of our entire health and human services, and he's someone who literally rejects germ theory. So like this isn't just limited to just trans people. Like, oh, trans people went too far. We demanded too much recognition too fast. It's like entirely because the system that these Republicans want to continue to prop up, the system that enriches billionaires who all visited Epstein's Island, etc. They're doing this because they get paid to do it. RFK Jr. isn't anti-science. Well, he might be because he genuinely believes it, but he also has a huge financial incentive to continue to be anti-science because he's backed by mega corporations that sell like supplements and, pseudoscientific quackery, because those companies make a large amount of money. And none of this is happening in a vacuum. And the entire reason they are fixated on trans issues is because it's very easy to arouse a large degree of emotional response from conservatives, particularly MAGA conservatives that are deep in the bubble. And that outpouring of emotion distracts them from the fact that they're being robbed blind. That is it, full stop. Like, I'm not entirely sure, like, in your, you're saying there's no blame here, but like, you did kind of say that gender ideology as kind of put forth by the left is to blame for Donald Trump being reelected. Right? Am I misunderstanding?
I never used the word blame, but okay.
Well, yeah, but like what word would you prefer?
I'm not saying I'm not here to place blame. I'm just like, if I had a button in my table that I could press that would kill a bunch of people from the current U.S. government, I would press it, like, just because it would make the world better. So like, I'm just like, I don't care at this point. I'm just, if we did this differently, would the world be better now? Yes or no? If yes, then we should have done it.
Well, what I guess I'm confused. What are you saying went too far? Like, I laid out.
It's not about going too far. It's, I don't know.
What
I feel
is
like
it about
we lost the messaging. And
okay,
it was...
what messaging was lost? We need like more specifics. What about what your criticism is? Because otherwise, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, in particular, I'm curious what the fuck you mean when Kamala Harris didn't say the word transgender one single goddamn time through her presidential, how in the world could trans ideology or like trans rhetoric have had anything to do with Donald Trump getting reelected when the Democrats made a big fucking point of keeping our name out of their mouths? They did not support us. They didn't condemn us either. but like she literally didn't talk about us at all. So how is that relevant to Donald Trump being the president?
I think even if she didn't mention trans people, people on the right, people in the public already had their minds made up about what the left was and what the left wanted.
Did you
I
know
don't
that
think
Republicans are fucking tired of the trans issue? Did you know that in Republican states, they've asked Republican voters what they think about Republican politicians hammering on the trans issue, and Republican voters are fucking tired of it.
that's good. Okay.
Yeah,
But
that's good.
like what I'm still confused. What exactly are you saying like the left did?
So like when I say we lost the messaging, I think about what I mentioned before when I used to watch Ben Shapiro and those people. I think like all of those, like Ben Shapiro destroys libtards montages and like all of that. Those,
Yeah.
I think all of that
Using their
kind of
massive platforms to
ruined.
amplify social media posts from people who have like a couple hundred
Yeah.
followers, engineering
Yeah.
a backlash against a minority group that holds no systemic power.
Yeah.
That's called them creating a scapegoat
But
group.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
it's
what I
dumb,
guess
yeah.
what's the role of the left in this?
Yeah, what could they have done differently?
Yeah.
If yeah, like I said before, I think the whole thing with gender didn't have to be described or explained this way.
What are you
I think
talking
it could have.
about? Because transgender like terminology has been around for decades. Like it was around like 30, 40 years ago. Like what do you
But it
what
kind of
changed?
clashes with what I said before about being free to do whatever you want, regardless of your sex. And I'm aware that there's a distinction there, but like
Trans
I mean, I
people
think it's
weren't the ones saying that you can't do whatever you want. That's conservatives.
yeah, but
So
so like there's hardcore conservatives, there's people on the left, and there's people that don't really give a shit that much, and it's these people who get manipulated into thinking
yeah,
the left
we
like
By bad actors on the right.
yeah,
yeah
also I want to ask who funds Ben
so
Shapiro?
So true.
who
Who funds Ben Shapiro? Who funded the
I,
Daily Wire?
I don't know, some right wing magnate, I assume.
Yeah, some right-wing like oil and gas magnates. Who funds a lot of these major far-right content creators?
Same kind of
Who
guy.
funds PragerU?
Yeah.
It's immensely wealthy people who are deliberately trying to cultivate a message that furthers their own interests, i.e., what
Yeah.
profits them,
But
at the and they're willing to
what
do
I'm
anything to weaponize that and make money for themselves. So like
yeah what
I
I'm
guess
trying to
I'm
say is they
confused here. I'm sorry. We've let you talk a lot and try and explain what your point is. And I've been sitting here for like 10 minutes now, like giving you an open floor and trying to understand exactly what you're saying, like the left did wrong. And you're pointing, well, Ben Shapiro did an, owned compilation around like trans people. But like what you're talking about is the result of like far right propaganda that billionaires
yeah.
bought and paid for. And so I'm kind of sitting here like, it kind of sounds like you're just saying the people that are being deliberately demonized by billionaires in order to act as scapegoats for billionaires looting our country, the problem are like the people who are going on TikTok and saying they identify with neopronouns or something. Like that's what it sounds like to me.
And
And every time I
understand,
say
yeah.
that, you're like, "Well, no, that's not exactly what I mean." And then I let you talk more, but you keep coming back to that same point. And I'm just really confused. So I'm going to ask you one last time. And I want you to like pull together your ideas into one cohesive bundle. And I want you to make your actual argument. Stop talking around it. Stop like trying to be like diplomatic. I just want you to be blunt. This is the show where you can call in and be blunt about your ideas. Like, what do you think led to Donald Trump being elected that trans people had any role in whatsoever outside of being the targeted scapegoat of the Epstein class?
I think these people with money on the right that you said fund all of these right-wing influencers, they saw that the way that the whole gender and trans thing was being described by the left was being described in a way that could be easily portrayed as like in a way that would be unpopular with a majority of the population. So they paid all these influencers to like what we said to
Yeah, they paid a bunch of influencers to lie and to deliberately misconstrue what the actual scientific basis of trans people are. So, like, the problem here is far-right propaganda, not trans people. The problem here is that billionaires have captured our media and are using it to completely destroy any semblance of, like, public education on this topic. And instead are deliberately lying so they can continue to loot us and ruin not just America, but the rest of the world in the process.
So true. Someone in chat asked this question, and I'm going to repeat it because I think it's a really good point. Noah, how do you know what leftists say or the left says about trans people if you listen exclusively to right-wing content creators?
You don't. I mean, you just know what those
you
creators
specifically
are telling you.
You currently have just said that you went down the right-wing rabbit hole and you listened to Ben Shapiro a bunch, and you're also saying that the way that the left has carried about this issue has contributed in some way to the rise of Donald Trump. And I'm just like, is your perspective of what, quote, the left says about trans people informed by the contextual representations that Ben Shapiro throws together?
No,
Like,
this
how
was 10 years ago when I watched Ben Shapiro. I stopped watching all of these people when they started supporting Donald Trump, basically.
Okay,
So
well,
it's been a
I'm
while.
glad that you're not a completely shit person. Then that's good.
But sorry, I forgot part of the question.
It's okay. I think we're kind of reaching a point where we should move on to maybe one last call before we do super chats.
Yeah.
I encourage you to call back again sometime. Maybe we can help, get closer to the crux issue, because I feel like we didn't quite get there this call. But so I don't want you to feel like, we're going to leave you hanging, because if you call back, especially, the next time I'm on, if I recognize your name in the chat, or in the call screeners, I'll be like, yeah, let's continue that conversation. But thank you so much for calling. I hope you sleep well tonight, because it's late in Europe right now. And we'll talk to you again sometime. All right, Noah?
Okay, see you.
Yeah.
Later. Okay.
Almost.
Well, that was a little bit frustrating.
I feel like there was almost the point being made, and it's frustrating when communication just seems to completely break down.
Yeah. I don't feel like you fully deconstructed from your Ben Shapiro days if you're still using the term gender ideology. And I don't think our call screener would have put that in the call screener notes if it weren't for the fact that you said it. So, like, you have not completely deconstructed those beliefs yet, and we still have some progress to go on that. And I don't think that the point that I made where it's like, this isn't even popular among Republican voters, I feel like that was missed a little bit. Like that, even the Republican voters are tired of fucking hearing about it because it is a manufactured controversy. Like it, fundamentally is just that Republicans keep bringing it up and will not let it go, and keep pointing at trans people just casually trying to exist. Like a lot of those response compilations is to just trans people sharing their joy. Dylan Mulvaney was attacked for comedically sharing her trans joy, just living her life as an individual. So is the answer to this question that like trans people just have to severely curtail what they post on the internet. Like,
Yeah, but better not make an Instagram post with a can of beer in your hand, because they do not care for that. No, sir.
listen, do you listen to Bo Burnham at all?
Yeah.
Okay, you know the country music song?
Yeah.
I hadn't listened to it in a really long time, and he's like a Bud Light with the logo facing out, and I fucking cracked up because who knew that we were going to end up with guns and Bud Light? That the left was going to have guns and Bud Light. That's crazy.
It really is. Everything's upside down right now.
It is. We are in the upside down. Okay, so we have time for like maybe one more call, and then we'll get into super chats. Don't forget to get your super chats in. No hashtag no vote. Hashtag Team Lux or hashtag Team Jack to vote for whoever's gonna have to defend that silly position, or the loser has to defend that dragons are inherently transgender is at 57%. So I feel pretty confident that
Heck
that's what we're
yeah.
gonna have to do. Okay, so since we only have time for one of these, is there one that you feel like we'd be able to
16-2, I think.
Okay, cool. So I apologize, Dale and Stephanie. We will not have time to take your calls today. Sorry that you waited for a bit there. We just had a lot more controversial calls than we were expecting today. But thank you very much for calling. We appreciate you. We're going to bring on Maureen, she, her pronouns from Canada. Maureen, you're live on the line with Luxander and Jack. How's it going?
Howdy.
It's going good. How are you guys?
Doing
Amazing.
great.
Yeah, my question, I think you covered some of this when you were talking about that gender traits sort of overlap. And I was wondering if you thought a more androgynous society makes it easier on a transgender person, or is the need for the physical change still going to be more important? Would it be easier, or does it make it harder? I don't know. Does that make sense?
So, what do you mean by a more androgynous society? Can you elaborate on that
Well,
just a little bit?
I guess maybe I'm getting the wrong terminology, but I'm guessing like there are a lot of, women that have what would be considered men traits. You know, I don't like wearing makeup anymore. I've always worn my hair short. Things that you think of men today are starting to wear more makeup and jewelry and things. Does that make it easier, I think, on a person who is transitioning to be accepted, or for them to feel more accepted, how they feel? Or are they always going to need, the physical change to really feel the way they are? I don't know.
I guess
Maybe.
I would say I think that a society with like more freedom to present how you want to present would make it easier to be trans. Because I think in the past, a lot of trans people who came out as trans felt the need to be a binary trans person for their own safety. So like even if you felt more non-binary, like, and I'm talking like 30, 40 years ago, um typically you might be able to find some comfort in just being like a David Bowie fan. But I think that a lot of folks who want to like transition had to pigeonhole themselves as one or the other, right? And I think that nowadays, with a more expanded understanding of gender, like it's easier for people to exist outside of that binary as like non-binary or various stripes. And I think maybe what my goal, right? I kind of imagine myself a gender abolitionist, right? Um, and what I mean by that is, I think it'd be great and ideal if we could get as a society to a point where the prescriptive notion of gender just kind of ceased to exist, and people could exist, however they choose to. And even if we get to that point as a society, there are still going to be some people who feel the need to alter their bodies. And that's the thing about that is, in that sort of society, there's just no stigma related to that. And I think maybe that's somewhat what you're talking about. Because I think no matter how like androgynous a society might be, there are going to be people who want to change different aspects of their body to align themselves with their identity. Um, it just might not be as oppressive to do so as it is right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I understand it. I guess I'm always wondering why it's so hard for people to accept that people feel a different gender. Um, because I know so many people that present with both traits. And when I was younger, if you were a female and you acted too much a woman, and you acted too much like a man, you were assumed to be, you must be a lesbian, like that kind of thing. And back then,
Yeah.
that was a kind of scary thing. I mean, I'm 70, so I'm talking about back in the early 60s. So, as things change, but even in your own life, everybody there's people in your life that have traits that you would consider feminine or masculine. So it's always been hard for me to understand why people can't accept somebody. So I guess I'm thinking that the more physical you can make yourself look that sex, I guess the more easier it's going to be for you. So I just thought that maybe the more accepting people became of people, I don't know, inhabiting both genders makes it easier. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think you are, I think you are hitting close to it, like the truth of the matter, which is that like a lot of our really strong binary ideas come out of the fact that like in the 1800s and early 1900s and through to like the 1970s, there were laws on the books that literally meant that if you were a woman and you wore pants and like a suit coat and a bowler hat, you could be arrested and thrown in prison.
Mhm.
Um, because there were laws on the books that if you wore 3 items of clothing that did not comport or align with your gender assigned at birth or sex assigned at birth, they could throw you in prison, right? And they use these laws to like raid bars and raid park benches, etc. And so it became really ingrained in society that there were actual super strong consequences for breaking out of the gender binary in this way. I know my mom grew up, and we grew up, Midwest. I'm from the Twin Cities area, and my mom wasn't allowed to wear pants to school as a kid because that was a boy thing. And when she got into high school, like her rebellion was wearing pants to school, and she was edgy and in that way. And like, but that stems from the laws that were on the books at the time, and like beyond that even. And so um I think that you are maybe not using the terminology I would use, but I think you're correct. I think that the closer we get to a society that accepts androgynous folks and people who kind of exist outside of these binary ideas of gender, the closer we're going to get to a society where people are free to change their gender identity to align with how they feel and change their bodies to align with their gender identity. And I think that's going to be a good thing for everybody.
Yeah. There's definitely two components, I will add. Like, I know somebody who got vocal surgery a couple years back because they were passing as a man in like every way. Their beard was coming in, they had the short hair, they had the big broad shoulders, but their voice was giving them away, and like no amount of vocal training was helping them accomplish the goal of like, and they lived in Texas. So it was like, oh, literally physical danger if I am clocked and somebody thinks that I'm trans. So they ended up getting vocal surgery to kind of help them cross that final threshold of social acceptance. And like it was a matter of physical safety for them versus like, I don't think there's any amount of like societal explanation for why I feel like I have sexual dysfunction because I only have one set of genitals and not the both of them. So, like, I don't know if any amount of like being raised on a desert island or being raised in the Star Trek future where nobody gives a shit, like, where does that come from if not some kind of intrinsic issue where like imagination has to take a large role in my sexy time, you know? So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of both. Like, there are going to be some things that get easier the more societal acceptance we get. And then there's like body dysphoria that is just, you know, you can't help the repulsion or the despondence that is the misalignment that you're experiencing. Which is why I tend toward a like, this is something fundamental that's happening in our developmental process or in our brains or something. Like, yeah, clearly people are compelled by something to make these changes. And some of those are intrinsic and some of them are external, right? Like I realized during the initial quarantine that I didn't actually want top surgery. I just thought that I would get misgendered less if I got top surgery. So it was like, once I'm not around people all the time, I no longer feel like that, and any kind of pressure on that front. So yeah, it's a little bit of column A, a little column B.
Yeah, you gotta let people feel the way they feel. I trying to change somebody because you don't like it is never going to work. You just make both of you miserable. You know, you're trying to change somebody and you won't accept something. It's never a good thing for either person. So, yeah, you know what? When you brought up the clothing thing, I always find that is just the most ridiculous thing. I mean, in today, with everybody wearing everything, I mean, it's just ridiculous that they still have standards. Like, I think in your own House of Representatives, you had a little thing a couple of years ago where women were baring their arms. Oh my God, how dare they? And if they didn't want to wear skirts or something all the time. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Like, that makes you the person. Like, you're not a good representative because you don't dress right. You know, the clothes make the man thing is ridiculous. And it's,
Absolutely.
I don't know. There's just so much ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, it's tough, and society is stupid a little bit. But I hope that we addressed your question a little bit. I agree,
Yes,
like
you
with
did.
the idea of like, let's move toward a society where we just don't pressure people on this front. I think I usually use gender anarchy instead of gender abolition because TERFs kind of poisons gender abolition.
Oh, I can
And
see that.
I want to stand in opposition to that. And, you know, anarchy is provocative. But we're all in alignment here. It would be best if we could just kind of lay off about it. But yeah, thank you so much, Maureen, for your call. We're going to move on to super chats, but I appreciate you. And I'm sure we'll
Okay.
talk to you again sometime.
Thanks for taking my call. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Maureen was such a delight.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, she's a repeat caller and she's usually got good vibes. So okay, well, that's the end of the calls portion of today's show. I'm going to go ahead and close call-in studio.
I think that was the spiciest show I've been on to date.
We did it. It was one of the spicier ones I've had in quite a while, too.
Yeah.
So that was awesome. All right, so we're doing the $5 or more super chats. We're going to go back and forth reading them, get in your votes with the hashtags, no hashtag no vote, hashtag Team Lux or hashtag Team Jack, to defend the premise that dragons are necessarily transgender. That's going to be a fun one. So starting with $5 from Squirrel Knitter, who says, I'm embarrassed by my state, but not surprised. It's been heading this way ever since Brownback said he'd use the state as a live experiment. God, fuck Brownback.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
Living up to that.
Yeah.
Thank you for the $10 New Zealand monies from Christina Hankey NZ. The poll, yes, but only because of the way that they have written the law. Misogynistic bastards. I don't know of any legal forms that could stop it except maybe estopel. I don't know what that means.
I don't know that one.
Shame on them, Team Lux.
Yes. Yeah, it's the thing that is so egregious to me is that like there's some term that's more than just grandfathered in. Like there is some legal term for like the protections of a previous legal system being enshrined even if the law changes in the future. And it just seems really fucked up. But, you know, that's the world we live in now. Thank you for $5 from One-Eyed Atheist, who says hello from a trans refugee in California. Interesting times, huh? West Coast, West Coast. Shout out. I'm looking forward to planning a trip to Northern California sometime. I want to see the big trees.
Ooh, yeah, me too.
Big trees.
The big trees are cool. Thank you for the $50 dono from Darth Willow. A trans person is a person. All people are sorry, I wanted to read that as automouse. Autonomous without immoral legal constraints. True.
Indeed.
Thank you
Ex
so
post
much.
facto might have been what I'm thinking. Let me look this up. Ex post facto from a thing done afterward refers to laws that retroactively change the legal consequences of actions committed before the law's enactment. Yeah, that's not the one I was thinking of, but it does address some of the issue that I'm having. Like, I mean, I don't actually know if there was anything in the law, I would have to read it, that states that your previously legal gender marker change is now retroactively invalid. So maybe that might be one of the basis upon which this law is not upheld. But anyway, thank you for that. $5 from Beaker Squeakers, who says, I would like to see the baby. Hashtag TACIS Dream Team. Hashtag don't make me choose. Hashtag Team Lux. Hashtag non-binary represent. Yeah, for everybody who's been a fan for a while, you guys may remember my Void Kitty, Mitternacht, passed away just before Christmas. And I did just get a new cat after like a grieving period and a like ramp up to finding the right one. And she hasn't even been here for a week yet. So I'm not trying to compromise our trusting relationship by like picking her up and making her be on camera. She did jump up here earlier, but I don't think you could see it because we were on the smaller screens. But yeah, she will eventually make her appearance, I'm sure.
It was very cute.
Yeah, she's adorable.
Thank you for the $10 Australian Dusk Frame 7331. You guys know Riverboat Jack, right? If she was an arrow carrying mustelid making duck sounds, would she be called Quiver Stoat Quack? The world may never know.
The world may never know. Thank you for the generous $20 from Darth Willow, who says, I suspect almost everyone is dysmorphic. It's why guys inject steroids and work out at the gym, diet, use makeup, and have plastic surgery. Why is HRT considered such a stretch? I mean, we've had this conversation repeatedly. I am definitely on the page of like, cis people have all kinds of gender dysphoria. So it's like, we've actually had a little bit of a debate. Like Ben and I were talking about like, should we even call it gender affirming care? Or should we just call it trans care? Because gender affirming care is not really being attacked because women can get boob jobs and men can get testosterone and like hair follicle transplantation or whatever. And nobody takes issue with that. So it's really trans healthcare that's the problem. Anyway.
Yeah. Thank you for the $5 dono karaoke leather girl, I'm going to assume. Recent trans news, all Catholic umbrella health systems in the US have put into effect a ban on all gender affirming care for youth and adults. Oh boy.
Unsurprising. This is why religion bad. This is why I'm anti-theist. Religion bad.
This is why we shouldn't let them run hospitals.
That's fucking true. Jesus Christ. Yeah, just imagining being like the only hospital I can go to as a Catholic hospital. Like, I'll drive an hour, actually. It doesn't matter what kind of life-threatening situation I'm in. Thank you for the £5 from Pip, who says, I turned 37 today. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
I'm still the same genderqueer chaos incarnate as ever. Thank you to TACIS and the line for everything you do. Thank you. Happy Borf. Hope it's a good one.
Thank you for the $10 from Bramley CX. Did you hear about the non-binary sniper? They never miss. They also never missed her. Hey, Team Lux.
Listen, They/Them was a good movie that you should watch. And it's like the non-binary main character is an excellent shooter. So you know, there's a little bit of a Mary Sue situation, but I needed that in my life. Thank you for $10 from Darth Willow. Again, thank you so generous today. I'm asexual. Recently, someone explained that that's the A in LGBTQA to me, and I was shocked and honored to find out I'm a kind of queer I didn't know was queer. Thank you, my people. Welcome. Welcome to the umbrella. Yeah, you're here.
Come on in.
You're here, you're queer, and not doing anybody, probably.
Thank you for the $5 dono from William Matz, 1991. Y'all, I legit might be cursed. Here's $5 for karma, I guess. Well, karma's not here, but we'll take the money anyway. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. And geez, Louise, y'all are just so generous today. A 50 Canadian units from Canadian Goose Honk Honk says, "Hey Lux and Jack, love the show as always. I was wondering if you two are aware of the new Bureau of Prisons policy on how it will treat trans inmates with gender dysphoria. Transtistics has an article on it, and it essentially is conversion therapy. I've heard about it.
Yes.
I didn't read about it, but I'm assuming it's bad."
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to turn the Federal Bureau of Prisons into essentially detransition camps for
Yeah.
trans people.
So coming up with
It's
reasons to arrest trans people and then denying us medical care while we're incarcerated.
yeah, it's another component of why the Kansas bill is so dangerous. Because it does come with jail time for trans people if they get caught. So it's a really, really dire situation.
I'm so happy to live on this planet.
Yeah. Thank you for the $5 from Melatonin Ale, or sorry, Melatonin Ale, I believe.
Yes.
I got it right this time. My brother-in-law used Hermath, and I told him it's intersex for humans and went on an autistic chromosome/biology info dump. Hashtag Team Lux. Good on you. Good
Nice.
on you.
Thank you for $5 from Storm Chaser Noah, who says the Kansas law has the chasing community pretty upset. The chasing community. Oh, I wonder if enough chasers call and complain if it'll change anything. God damn it. I guess do something good with your weird fetish. Like, fucking, oh, Jesus.
Well, wait, I legitimately don't know enough about this sub community. Are storm chasers called chasers? Is that what you guys call yourselves?
Is that what you meant? Is that what you meant? Because I thought you meant trans chasers. I didn't even connect that maybe you were meaning storm chasers. Like, I'm sorry. My response was entirely predicated on the idea that you were talking about trans chasers. I'm so sorry, Noah. Please correct me in the chat if I'm off base.
I guess Kansas would have a large community of storm chasers. That makes sense.
It does. We got tornadoes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I'm a little thrown.
I also know that the storm chaser community has a lot of conservatives in it, because there was a storm chaser in my Discord community and stuff who was commenting that it was hard for them as a left-leaning person within that space. So.
Oh, weird. Oh, I wonder why that is. Anyway, thank you for the $5, BB Bunny from 1982. I can read. I promise. I have a degree in English. I love y'all so much. Keep up the good work. I love y'all on Spicy Calls. Hashtag Team Lux.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you for $5 from Marceline Gigi, who says, "How do I play bop it with someone who uses its pronouns? Precisely how will I know which it to bop, twist, pull, and flick?" Hashtag Team Jack. Listen, that's bedroom talk right there.
Thank you for the £5 from Barbara Barrett 07. It has been weaponized against me all my life, but seeing Lux reclaim these has taken much of the pain away. Lux is my hero. Hashtag Team Lux. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm gonna do one of these now. A little tiny heart. Gen Alpha heart.
Oh my goodness.
You gotta get all of them. There's this one, and then there's this one. Right?
Oh, yeah.
I can't do it. And then there's the little tiny one. It's much easier for me to do a gang sign because I learned how to do that on the bus when I was in school. Anyway, thank you for Dan Australian from Cliff, who says, "Deciding between you two is hard AF for me, so gonna go hashtag Team Justice for Dr. Softhole." Since it seems the topic will be dragon related, and I want to see Lux defend that since it's like giving Jack a cranoplant. What the fuck is Dr. Softhole?
So I was talking about AI and the dangers of AI, and so I picked up my hair binder, which is like they're soft scrunchies, and I was like, "Look, let me show you the danger. Okay, you guys will empathize with anything that is even vaguely anthropomorphized. This is Dr. Softhole," and then I like flicked it off screen. You will never see Dr. Softhole again. She's dead, and my community has continued to run with that for literally months now.
I love that it just is like one moment that lives on in infamy. Is like you might have not remembered it afterwards if the community hadn't picked up on it. That's very funny.
I would have 1000% forgotten. One of them made an emote for it in my community.
Amazing. I love it.
Yeah. Thank you for the $5 from Melatonin Ale. Gender is weebly wobbly, but does it fall down? Hashtag Team Lux.
Yeah,
know?
it does.
Yeah.
Thank you for another £5 from Barbara Barrett, who says masculinity and femininity are not a characteristic of any gender. Yeah, words are
True.
stupid.
True.
Yeah.
Thank you for the $5 from Joshua Everett 9887. Work kept me from the first part of the show. Revolution. Hashtag Team Riverboat Jack.
Thank you for the $5 from Tiny Fox Bones. Excellent name. Are you an oddities person? You make the oddities? You send me oddities? Anyway, I was AFAB, but I'm not non-binary because I want to have big muscles. Hashtag Team Lux. See? There you go. Ladies swole.
Hell yeah.
I'm into the mommy milkers, big muscle mommy lady thing that we got going on right now.
Hell yeah. Thank you for the $5 from William Matz 1991. All shapeshifters are trans. Hashtag Team Lux.
Fair enough. It is like for non-binary people, like a very common, like if I had a superpower, don't give me superpowers. I will abuse them, just to be clear. But if you were going to give me one, shapeshifting would be a pretty good one.
God, I'd be insufferable as a shapeshifter.
I know. Thank you for the $5 from Joshua Everett, who says, explaining the ship of Theseus is a time-honored rite of passage for new The Line hosts. Hashtag Team RBJ. That's awesome. I'm unfamiliar with that, but that's cool.
True. Thank you for the $5 from C Gray 08. Loving all the ST talk and chat today. Makes me hopeful we could live to see that level of acceptance for gender identity. Hashtag Team Lux.
Hell yeah.
Indeed.
I almost brought up the episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where there's the androgynous species and one of them identifies as female. But I was like, I'm going to not do it. But somebody in the chat, I was like, you get it. You get it. I don't think it was super relevant to Maureen's point that she was making. But thank you for the $5 from Majora's Casket. Cool. Loving this duo. Y'all have great chemistry. Heart. Hashtag Team Jack. Yeah. This is a good one.
Thank you for the 5,000 ARS. I don't know where that's from, but
Argentinian pesos, and that's about $5, I think.
Awesome. From Olivia BR. I don't have anything to say, just that how can I have Jack's eyes? Hashtag Team Jack. If I remember, I'll put it in my will. You can have them.
Gonna grab them. Anyway, thank you for the $10 from Darth Willow. So generous today. Thank you so much. Women didn't make men misogynistic. Trans people didn't enable fascism. True.
Yep.
No notes.
That was such a frustrating conversation. Thank you for the $5 from Arnd Nash. Ignore YouTube handle. Nathan is my name. Sorry. Thank you for the $5, Nathan. F it. Voting for Team Lux. Tough call. You both rock. Nap time. Listen to VOD later. Hell yeah.
Yeah. Didn't Riker bone that female identifying humanoid? You know it.
Probably.
You know it. That's called being omnisexual. Thank you for the £5 from Barbara Barrett, who says, to tell an oppressed group that you're not a member of how they should do things is in and of itself an act of oppression. Yeah, I agree. No notes.
I'm still confused what he was trying to tell us trans people did.
I don't know.
Thank you for the $5, Glam Pixie. The right was going to demonize marginalized people no matter what. What did the left do wrong? I still don't know.
Yeah. Thank you for another 5,000 pesos from Olivia, who says, libertarians, you realize your personal project. Also libertarians, you can't force me to respect your gender. Yeah, they really have issues with like existing in a society with people.
Thank you for the generous $20 from Colorado Carol 55. Hey ladies, thanks for being visible and speaking trans truths. Trans elder here that wants to remind the community we will survive these horrible times. Team Riverboat. Hell yeah, very true. We will survive these horrible times.
Hell yeah. Enough of us will, at least.
Yes.
$5 from the Chimera says, I was in queue. I'll call back next week. Great calls today. Arden, it was a pleasure. Smite me. Hashtag Team Lux. You guys are badasses. What is it with all of you? When I post in the chat, I'm in the polls. I'm like, did you hit like? Did you hit share? Or are you going to make mother angry? So many of you choose make mother angry. Or you say, no, sir, it's the whipping post for me. Why do you always want to be castigated and punished? It's such a weird thing about you guys.
I don't understand it. No, I understand it.
I just got done saying I love like muscle mommies. And like, I get it. I get the Dommy mommy thing.
Thank you for the $5 Canadian from Canadian Goose 007 honk honk. Oop, forgot to pick a team. Hashtag Team Lux. Let's go.
Hell yeah. It'll be more even when you're on like as a regular host for more period of time. Cause like I'm literally just riding on a pre-existing reputation.
I do not mind. I'm prepared.
Thank you for the $20 from Carol, who says, have to make amends. Love you, Lux. So sorry for wrong pronouns. Hashtag Team Lux. No worries. I understand that I'm a femme presenting individual. I don't try very hard anymore to look non-binary, so it's fine.
Thank you for the $5 from Ginger T81. Transgender and proud. Hashtag Team Lux because I want to hear because I want to hear Jack defend. That's fair. I have a lot of thoughts about dragons.
Yeah, we got to put you through the ringer. You know, we've got to, we've got the trial by fire.
Yeah.
This is our hazing ritual, I guess, is like
Trial
making
by
you do the
fire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. Thank you for the $5 from Sean, who says, I'm not sure whether my first super chat came through. So here's another. Oh God. For natural, n is greater than 1. N to the 4th plus 4 is never prime. Every time we have one of those, I'm like, I'm so certain that I just cast a spell in Latin or something. Like,
thank you for the $10 from Winnie Rose 81. Shouts to my Bradley's baddies and Jack's shimps and the call screener as always. GFY Jimmy. Great show, everybody. Hashtag Team Jack.
Jimmy doesn't like compliments. So people say, go fuck yourself, Jimmy. And that's like their way of complimenting him, I guess.
That's very respectful.
Yeah. Also, shout out to the Bradley's baddies. Listen, Bradley's baddies, you need to harass him in his chat because I messaged him on Discord to try to schedule a show. And we need some, follow-up incentive on that. Thank you for the $10 from Fiona, who says transporters could simultaneously ship of Theseus and Cuddy Sarkit with continuing awareness if the deconstruction and reassembly is concurrent. So maybe a continuity of self. Hashtag Team Lux. Let's not get into it because we don't have time. I've got thoughts.
I just don't think it's continuity.
I think it's Cuddy Sarking you every time. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for the $20 Australian salmon moose. I want you to address your anti-Pacific bias. Team Jack.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we don't have a trans-Pacific show yet.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, we need I guess like a presenter in Hawaii or Japan or something. Mm-hmm. Anyway, oh God, thank you for another $5 from Sean Loves Maths, who says the number 2,730 always divides n to the 13th minus n for natural n. Note, any number including 0 divides 0, even though 0 divided by 0 is undefined except in wheel theory. I understood none of that.
Me neither. It's the wah 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 as soon as math gets involved.
Yeah.
Thank you for the $5 from Beakers Squeakers. What is the new baby's name / coat color? Please say Tortitude Supremacy, Team Jack, balance the scales.
Her name is Mina. She is a long-haired she's got like tabby, but with like white on her. I've got pictures on my Patreon for $1 a month on my patreon.com/Luxander. $5 from Storm Chaser Noah says, yes, I meant Storm Chasers. Okay. I'm so sorry. I am so trans-pilled that I fucking completely didn't understand.
Thank you for the £5. Sean Loves Maths. We say A divides C if there exists AB such that AB equals C. Since 0 times 0 equals 0, we can say 0 divides 0, but also 0 times 1 equals 0, meaning 0 divided by 0 is not unique. I love you.
Thank you so much. Another $5 from William says, I'd change small things just enough to notice and just gaslight the heck out of people with shapeshifting. Hashtag Team Lux. Yeah, like Envy in Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Like, oh, I forgot this one has a mole here on her face.
Thank you for the $5 from Tiny Fox Bones. I make all kinds of art with bugs and bones. It grosses my wife out, but she supports me anyway. That's lovely.
Hell yeah. Thank you for $5 from KBSB2009, who says, I always say I anger mother and click like anyway. Hashtag Team Lux, cryptid NBs stick together. I figured that that's what you guys were doing, but still, it's funny to me.
All right.
We're done.
There we go.
We've
We
reached
did
the
it.
end. Dragons are inherently transgender has won. Let me get this ready for Jack. All right. Jack, are you prepared to defend this wild and crazy position?
I am prepared to defend this.
All right, here we go. Charging up the clock in 3, 2, 1, go.
So I think in order to properly address this topic, we need to look at the best guidebooks we have, which of course are written for Dungeons and Dragons. Dragons, literally in the title, and as we all know, sufficiently old enough dragons have an innate affinity with magic. We're all familiar with this, right? And the innate magic of dragons incorporates a lot of different spells, but notably one of the spells that often is included with dragons is shape change, rather. And it allows them to not just be trans species, but transgender as well, because they can be any kind of dragon from that point on that they choose. You know, it is not locked down in their biology because their biology is innately connected with any kind of form they so choose. So how a dragon chooses to look at any given point in time is a deliberate choice on their part. And in a lot of senses, perhaps for human timescales, we are incapable of knowing, dragon genders, for example, because dragons can live presumably forever. Dragons typically not dying of old age out here. Instead, they're at the whims of, dare I say, transphobic adventurers who decide to kill said dragons. Now, I would just say that these hate crimes have not gone unnoticed by the dragon community, and of course, they are taking action accordingly. Now, the dragons themselves can assume human form, and often, there is no rhyme or reason to these human forms. They're just doing what's comfortable to them. They're fitting into society how they so choose. And honestly, I think dragons have ascended beyond gender in a lot of different ways. They are gender ascendant rather than merely transgender. And I think we can all learn something from that.
Oh, you were muted, Lux.
I muted. I was typing. Chromie from World of Warcraft is a male dragon, but she chooses a female humanoid form and prefers to be called she, her. So yeah, confirmed.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's our show. Thank you to Arden for doing the producing thing. Thank you to our mods in the chat for keeping you unruly people, together. Thanks to Jack for joining me. Don't forget to check out our individual channels as well. I'm Luxander Moss. She's Riverboat Jack. And go to our Patreon at patreon.com/calltheline and become a patron. Thanks, everybody. Bye.